Hi everyone, welcome to the Sugar and Crumbs kitchen. Well, tonight we have Simon on camera. Hi Simon.
Hi Carol.
And we have Karen on comments. I'm not doing comments tonight, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But we do have the wonderful Rachel Hanna back in the kitchen, and can you believe it? I got her name right. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I had to spurt it out quick. So Rachel's back in the kitchen. She's going to be showing you some fabulous beginners sugar flowers. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're doing an intro into sugar flower making, so we're going to show you all the kit you would need and how it works.
Absolutely. And she's also going to tell you about her up and coming classes. I think we had one booked in for today, didn't we?
We did.
But we've moved it to later on in the year because we realised that we put the half price sale on and all of you gone class crazy. And we just thought, do you know what, let's move all these classes to September and October, and then you lot can all play with the classes that you're in, get yourselves all ready, because Hannah's 2 previous classes are in the sale. Right, I've done it now, Hannah. Rachel's 2 previous classes are in the sale, and you're going to love them. So I would definitely recommend buying them. On that note, let me just tell you a few things before I whiz off down the kitchen doing what I'm doing. Okay, so the sugars at half price finishes tonight at midnight. So if you want the £2 half price sugars, it finishes tonight at midnight. If you're on our email system, you will have been getting an email to tell you that. You got one this morning. John's going to arrange for another one to pop out now to remind you. So you won't be able to come back tomorrow and ask for that. The classes, they were supposed to finish last night, but John's extended them till the 30th. And for somehow he's got himself in a muddle and thought the 30th was tomorrow, but it's Wednesday. So you've got till Wednesday to buy all your classes. I think that's really quite a long time. That will have been 10 days that you've been able to buy classes.
That's a good time to buy
classes. Yeah, absolutely.
50%.
Pardon?
Especially at 50%.
50%, yeah. You can't learn this stuff. The stuff that you learn off the tutors for the full price is excellent. So when you're getting it half price, it's even better. Then the other thing is, Blue Wonder Dust is back in stock. It should have arrived on Friday, and I tell you, there couldn't have been anyone more devastated than the whole team. The whole team. Honestly, I think they all opened the box to find frozen blue because it drove us mad, and it wasn't there. We're like that.
It was just...
And those messages from the warehouse, and we have an app that we all share, and it was like, there's no frozen blue. So, oh God. Anyhow, we were then told that it was actually on its way. It was held up and we were going to get it tomorrow, but it arrived today. So it's actually in the building and we can dispatch it. Mini nifty nozzles, okay, we're sorted out. So mini nifty nozzles, I have been told I am definitely going to get them. They are now ordered and they will be here in 6 to 8 weeks. I have been promised 4 weeks, but for safety reasons, I've said 6 to 8 weeks because when things come into the country, we have to get past customs. So we have to wait for it to go in the little man, see the little tax man, let him decide how much he's going to charge me, and then they come out again. But sometimes it's very quick and not very painful, and sometimes it's very long and very painful. All right, so we just have to wait. But they are on pre-order on the website. If you want to buy them and you want to get yours reserved, reserve them now. You do have to pay in full. Do select your shipping options as well. Do read the terms and conditions. I've put plenty of terms and conditions in because I think the office are preparing themselves for the nightmare. So what I've done is I've put some terms and conditions to help it all run nice and smooth. And basically, we're only shipping the nozzles. So there's no add to orders. There's no click and collects. If you do pick a next day delivery, the next day delivery happens when the product comes in. Okay. So we hope to be dispatching 4 to 5 weeks, but we've given ourselves 8 weeks just in case there's any problems. All right, so I hope you all understand that. Let Karen know what your feedback is. We're going to do an impromptu live on Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock, Karen and I are in the kitchen, and I will be showing you all 13 nifty nozzles and how to use them. So I'll be decorating. It's not on the banner, nobody knows. We've only just decided it 5 minutes ago.
Well, you know what? We like to...
So we've only just decided it 5 minutes ago. So 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon, we'll be doing a live then. I would do it Thursday night, but we've got Laura in the kitchen. So 2 o'clock, come and watch us then, because I'm sure you're going to want to buy them. All right?
I like the Thursday afternoons.
You do like Thursday afternoons, Wednesday afternoons and Tuesday afternoons.
Can
Go
I
on.
just say, Kat,
Yep.
we are on YouTube.
Oh,
We
yes.
are broadcasting fine. And hello to all our YouTubers.
Crikey, Simon, that's a bit early for you. You normally
Well,
tell us as we get to the end of
Karen was asking
it.
a question, are we on YouTube? So there was some doubt as to whether we were on. But
Yeah.
we are on YouTube, and I
No.
can confirm there are at least 6 people responding.
There's a lot more watching, but there's not many chat on there.
No, we
Right.
haven't, Susan, we haven't got, not Susan, sorry, Marie, we're not doing a bouquet day on Thursday.
No,
That's not on Thursday, I'm sorry, no.
no, that's the end of July, isn't it? It's the 21st of July.
21st of July,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. All right then, yeah, so cupcake bouquet day is the 21st of July. So Thursday, 2 o'clock, I'll be here using the mini nifty nozzles, okay? Now, I'm going to buzz off down the other end of the kitchen. Karen's going to look after you now, and that's because I need to use all the nozzles, so you will hear me making some little sounds. I'll try to be quiet as I can, because I need to decorate some cupcakes that Simon can take photographs for later. All right then? Right, Rachel, hand it over to you. I've got it right.
I know. How long have I known
Debbie
that?
Hargreaves says, oh, Carol, you were doing so well.
Yeah, sure.
Hi everyone. I've got to look it up at final label.
Thank you for having me back. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Rachel from Marie Antoinette Cake Design and the Sugarcraft School. My surname is Hanna, which is why Carol keeps calling me Hanna. But it's also because you do have another tutor called Hanna, so it's easily mixed up. And it's been happening all my...
Rachel.
Does she? Oh, then I feel a bit better. I think you might be lying about that. So today we are going to, because I know a lot of when we've done lives before, and even in the classes that we did earlier this year, which are on sale till tomorrow night. Is it midnight tomorrow night, the classes?
They're on till midnight Wednesday night.
Yeah, midnight Wednesday, sorry, not tomorrow. So yeah, in those there was a lot of people asking about next steps and like moving on with their skills, and obviously sugar flowers is a big thing for wedding cakes, which is what I specialise in. So today we will be doing a class on them, but today we're going to do an introduction to flower making. So when I first started, I would obviously go online and go to cake decorating stores, and a lot of the stuff I just had no idea what it was. And I would read the description, and sometimes, you know, the information on websites can be great and sometimes not so great. And even when you buy a product sometimes, and what it comes with is like zero information of how to use it. So what I'm going to do is run through like an essential toolkit of sugar flower making. These are things that I use all the time, that I bought years ago and I'm still using all these years later. So none of it is super expensive. None of it in any of the individual components are expensive. But obviously, if you're starting from scratch and you've got everything to buy, then it's an initial investment. But please trust me when I say, if you then go on to learn lots of sugar flowers and make them either for fun or for orders, you will use those bits of kit over and over and over again. These things will last for years. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and obviously I'll demonstrate how to use some of the kit, and we'll be making some leaves and going right through to making them, colouring them, steaming them, glazing them and taping them, in the whole shebang. I'll also be showing you a couple of other bits, like how the other bits that we kind of will use that you'll see on websites, like Sugar and Crumbs, and that you might not really understand what it's for or how it's used, and you know why people would, or why you would possibly even order it. So I'm going to run through all of that. Along the way, obviously keep your questions coming in. Karen will keep shouting them out to me, I'm sure, and I'll answer anything that you guys have got that relating to sugar flowers, or any of the classes as well. So just to touch on the classes, the two that Carol mentioned of mine that are on sale until Wednesday night at midnight are the Introduction to Buttercream Wedding Cake. So that was the one from, I think, February. So in that we did 2 buttercream wedding cakes, 2 different finishes. We filled them, we covered them, we doweled and stacked them, we decorated them with fresh flowers, taught you how to do all of that in a food safe way, how to prep the flowers, how to arrange them, how to secure them on the cake. We also in that class talk about storage, transportation and all that stuff, because obviously if you've worked with buttercream at all before, particularly in this country where the weather can be really unpredictable, you will know that that can often be like a real stress point. In the second one we did an introduction to sugar paste wedding cake, so it was similar format to the first one but all about sugar paste. So in this one we did stacking and doweling as well. But we really focused on how to use sugar paste in different ways, with different techniques for different purposes. So We did marbled hexagonal cake with all those sharp edges and corners. We did the traditional drape method on round cakes. We did the tall cakes with the wrap method, and we did square cakes, which I know a lot of you dread. So it's a super, super easy technique that I share for all of those. So it's absolutely packed, and I talk through in the class so many other things surrounding wedding cakes, and just, you know, working on wedding cakes if you're doing it for your business for the first time, or even if you're just doing it, you know, friends and family have started asking you for their weddings. So it's really useful, and at £20, like, I have never sold anything so cheap.
Well, it was super good value at £40.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I did the comments for you on that class.
You did,
and you
yeah.
packed so much in. So it's an absolute bargain, ladies, at £20.
Yeah.
You won't get anything cheaper anywhere.
But the interesting thing is, have you seen how many people have posted in the group with the leaves that you put on? Was it your buttercream flowers class? The eucalyptus leaves?
Yes.
And people said, how do I make this? How do I make this? And really, we should be going back on there and say, join this class.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know. So, yeah, do obviously take advantage of that. I think loads of people have already signed up to it during the sale. I mean, there was lots of people on it anyway. So I think we've got over 250 people on the buttercream one now, and over 200 on the sugar paste one. So yeah, it's great. It's great that you're all sort of getting access to that at such a good price point. So hopefully...
There's lots of ladies on here saying that they've joined both your classes, and
Yeah.
that they've joined them.
They're a good binge watch as well, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I like that.
if there's nothing on Netflix, buy another class. So let's get started. So if any of you are not sure where to find me, or because I know you guys always ask, so you can find me on Instagram at the Sugarcraft School and at Marie Antoinette Cakes _UK. So I've got a wedding cake page which just has pictures of all my wedding cake designs on there, and on at the Sugarcraft School, that's all for my classes and tutorial stuff on there. And I have a Facebook group which is the Sugarcraft School with Rachel Hanna. So you can come join that as well if you want. It's a lovely little group. And everyone is really supportive and lovely in there, which I always get nice feedback that there's never any sort of, you know, everyone's really, there's quite a range of abilities in there, but everyone's really lovely and supportive and encouraging of each other, which
And
is
Nietzsche
lovely.
says she's been binge watching the classes.
Yes,
She loves the banter in them. And Sam, can I just check with you? Deirdre's just said the picture's very fuzzy on YouTube.
We're not having any problems at the moment.
No problems at the moment, so if you just want to refresh yours, Deirdre, you should be okay.
So, the first things first, so sugar flowers. I don't know how many of you already, you can say in the comments whether you've already made sugar flowers, whether you make them already at the moment and you're happy with them and you love making them, or perhaps if you're new to it and you're like excited to learn and give it a go and you want to, but you're a bit sort of confused as to where to start, or even a bit scared to start maybe. But basically sugar flowers are made out of flour paste or florist paste. So I'm going to be using tonight this one from Squire's Kitchen, which is available on Sugar and Crumbs. There are lots of different brands, like with sugar paste, there's different brands of flour paste. They are all a bit different in terms of their properties. This one from Squire's Kitchen is quite firm, which means it sets quite quickly, which in some instances is good. So if you're wanting things, if you're like pushed for time and you're needing to make some extra flowers and you've not got enough time to sort of wait to let things set up, then that's great. But if you're super new and you're taking your time making flowers, then sometimes this can start to firm up before you're ready for it to firm up. So the Squire's Kitchen one is quite a firm paste. I don't know if you can see that. I've just given it a little knead. I've not put any Trex into it. But I would say it's definitely firmer than sugar paste, because it's edible, but it's got like a natural setting agent in it that sugar paste doesn't have. So it will set firm and basically maintain its shape. So if you look at this peony here, this is from my little flower graveyard of spare flowers at home. These petals were made over a year ago, and they've kept the shape that I formed them into. So that curve there, it's maintained it because it's got a setting agent in there that sugar paste doesn't have, because we don't want sugar paste when we eat a piece of cake to be rock hard when you eat it. But we do want these to keep their shape and maintain the form that we shape them into. But to begin with, it's pliable, and it's about working on it while it's still pliable, getting it, manipulating it into the shape and the the size that you want it to, attaching wires to it, all that kind of stuff while it's still pliable, and then leaving it to set, and then you can obviously pop it on your cake. So different brands do have different properties, and what I would say with the Squires one, it's a good all-round one and it's readily available. If you are finding that this is setting up too quickly for you, you can mix it with like 50-50, like with something like the Renshaw one, because that is quite a bit softer. So just have a play, like with sugar paste, just have a play and see what suits you. For me, for example, sometimes when I'm working on particular flowers, I might mix something in. Other times I want it to set up really quickly, like if I'm just doing leaves, like I'm going to do some tonight. This is absolutely fine on its own. So you will need to keep this airtight, so this comes in a sealable pack. Not all of them do, so this is quite a nice one. This is a big pack, because obviously I get through quite a lot of them, but they sell them in smaller packs too. So this is usually about £15 for a kilo, but they do sell them in smaller packs. There's usually good life on it, but I like the fact that it's got a press seal on this, because this will start drying out once it's out in the air, out in the open, like with a lot of things. So once you've got it out of the pack, you need to keep it in a little Ziploc bag. So this is some that I've coloured in green, so you work on the small amounts but keep your pack sealed. And if it doesn't come with a seal, just make sure that it's wrapped tightly, just like you would with sugar paste, and pop it in a Ziploc bag. You can condition your flour paste, so just like you do with sugar paste. If it's a little bit firm and, if it's in winter and it will be a little bit more solid, you might want to pop a bit more Trex into it. So I'm just putting some vegetable fat into it, just like we do to condition sugar paste. And I'm just giving it a knead, and it will really help with that stretchability, which means it will be easier to work with when you're trying to use the tools on it.
There's a couple of ladies on here saying they struggle with the wiring. Will you be showing them how to do the wiring later?
I will. Yeah.
Brilliant. There you go.
We get these like
I know.
Can't wait,
Give me a minute.
We're just rolling out the paste, girls. We're just rolling
It's
out
like
the paste.
everyone else wants us to be done by 8:30 as well. We've got all night, ladies. Joking, Karen. Karen's like, we haven't.
It was Simon then did it off his shoulders then.
You guys have got a home to go to.
We don't mind. These ladies will stay with us until 3 in the morning if we ask them to.
No, I'm good.
He's had to do 2 late nights, haven't he, recently, every time?
Yeah.
So this one here is just the white, and I've added in some Pro Gel. So I colour mine with gel colours. So I've added a little bit of leaf green, well, mostly leaf green, and then a little bit of holly green just to darken it. But you can use any of the gel colours on, and they do take really well. Obviously, like with the sugar paste and like with buttercreams, when you're colouring it, the colour will take a little bit of time to develop. What I would say is, I tend to buy most of mine in white. It does come in other colours. So like the Squires one do a nice, if you're going for dark colours, then buy the pre-coloured, like with the sugar paste, buy the pre-coloured. So they do a really like, I think it's called holly green maybe, or leaf green. And that is a darker green, and they do like burgundies and stuff like that, because again you'll add so much colour in trying to get those deeper tones that it will like make this really stretchy and almost like too soft to set. So if you buy the pre-coloured ones for darker colours, otherwise I'll show you tonight how dark we're going with the leaves, and I've coloured this with Pro Gel colours.
Well, there's quite a few ladies on here. I'm really looking forward to this this demo tonight, because they do struggle with the leaves, and they find when they roll their paste too thin, the fingers go through it, or they've got too hot a hands.
Yeah.
So they're really looking forward to this. And this is just made laugh from Breeder. I didn't realise she's named her rolling pin Luther.
Oh yes, I did not realise.
She's named it what?
Luther. So she said, I used Luther on Saturday, then lovely text him on my big board.
Can't go. It's too funny.
Really just made me just chuckle to myself and I'm just reading that.
So one of the things that I will just talk about quickly is florist wires. So again, there's different brands of these. The culprit ones, there's a full range of different colours and different gauges. So very quickly, gauges. Again, I had no idea what this meant, because it doesn't always explain. It kind of assumes that you know this stuff when you're ordering. So it goes from like 18 gauge up to sort of 30 gauge typically, and I tend to buy white and green for flower making. So green for foliage, white for all like my roses and things like that. And I have way too many of them. basically the higher the number, so a 30 gauge is really thin, and an 18 gauge is really fat and like much sturdier. So I'll show you an 18 gauge.
That's what I got stuck on that, because I kept thinking the higher the gauge number, the thicker it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So this one here, you can see on this camera quite easily. So I've picked, this is a 26, or 28 rather, and this is a 20. So you can see here, this is much sturdier. So if you're doing long branches of things, so like long stems of flowers where there's extra weight in, you're going to want something thicker that's not as easy to bend. And then if you're wanting something fine, that's really easy to bend there. So I've put hardly any pressure on that at all. And of course, if you put extra weight on that, it's just not going to hold the weight. So it's important to understand the right gauge for the job that you're doing. So the thicker gauges, the sort of 18s, I would only use when I'm like taping big stems of things. So something like this. So like this spring blossom here. So this has a thick stem, even though each of these blossom heads was made on like a 26 gauge. When I've wired them all together, we don't want these flopping around massively, so we need them to hold the structure. So they've been wired on to a much sturdier wire to keep it all, and then you can pop that into your cake and it's not going anywhere. Whereas if you try to do it all and tape it onto a thin one, the weight of it is just going to be drooping everywhere, which is obviously not what you want. So that's just a little bit about gauges. To make it easy, for leaves, I tend to put my normal sort of rose leaves and stuff, and things like eucalyptus and ruscus, I tend to put them on a 26 gauge wire, which will be firm enough for you to do the individual petals and then tape them together. And if you're doing a big stem of them, like I say, you can then eventually tape them onto a much thicker stem so that you've got something really sturdy to pop into your cake. But we're going to be working on 26 gauge tonight for the leaves. So you can cut these stems into 3 or 4. So one pack does, I can't remember how many you get in each pack, but you can either cut them into sort of 3 or 4 depending upon how close you're going to tape it, so how big you're actually, a leaf you're actually putting onto the wire, and how much is then going to be spare. So I'll explain that shortly. So a couple of other things quickly. So here I have a veining mat. So this is how we create the veins in the back of the leaf, which is what the wire then goes into. So I'll show you how to use that in a second. I have a cornflower pouch. So this is just like a muslin cloth, and it's just got cornflower in, cornstarch, whatever you want to call it. So I have the Katie Sue leaf veiner set. So this is a good all-round leaf veiner set to start with, because you get the 4 different size cutters. Not only can they be used for roses, but they can be used for generic leaves as well. So one of the things that I always teach my students is that you don't need like to over invest in cutters and veiners. Multiple sets can be used for multiple flowers. So don't think that, oh, I'm doing this flower, I need to go and find a set that is specifically for that. Always look to what you've already got and just look at the petal shapes and see if you can use them and manipulate the shape of once you've cut it out. We'll do some manipulation and changing the shape of something. I've got some rose petal cutters which I'll show that with shortly, using the tools that we typically use. So I've also got the leaf veiner. This is a really nice veiner. So you'll see lots of different veiners, and veiners can be really expensive. So again, try and get like a really good leaf vein, like all-rounder. What you'll see sometimes is a set of veiners, or veiners in different sizes for leaves. So for example, this is like a multi one, so this has been made to fit the biggest size, so you can do all of them on this one veiner. What you'll see in some sets is a different veiner for every single cutter. You really don't need to buy that. Just buy the biggest one, and most of the time you'll be able to use that for all of them. You don't need, you don't need one to do the smallest one. As long as it does the biggest one, it'll do all of them, if that makes sense. Because they can be expensive, especially if they're good quality. On that, there is a real range of quality in veiners, so sometimes you might see things online, and if they're like, sometimes if the price is super cheap, like £1 or a couple of pounds, it means that they're copies of like legitimate veiners, and every time they do a copy of a veiner, the quality of it degrades, so the vein, you'll lose some of that vein. So try and make sure that you're not buying them like from random places on the internet, because the quality of the vein that you get from it will be less than what you perhaps want. Okay. Do you need to get Carol's hovering. She needs to get.
I need a chair and some colour.
Yeah, go for it. So a couple of other things. I've got the small rolling pin. I've got edible glue, which I don't always use, but obviously always have it to hand. A small pot like that will last you ages. We've got the gel cutters. I've also got this confectioner's glaze, which will finish off the leaves with. It gives them that lovely sort of waxy look that leaves tend to have over petals, which tend to be more matte. I've also got my PME steamer, tabletop steamer, which is super useful. You can, of course, just use your kettle if you haven't got one of those, but it's good because you can move it anywhere, take it with you, as I've done tonight. We've got a drying rack, which are out of stock on the website at the moment. You can use these. This is from FMM, and basically once you've made something and you might want to hang it upside down, you just hook the wire over like that. You can see that. Move that there.
Right, I'm done now, sorry.
It's okay. You just hook the wire over, and the petal or the leaf or the flower will be at this end, and it just, sometimes you need to dry things upside down. Alternatively, you can just pop that into a dummy, to a polystyrene dummy, and let it dry upright, but sometimes things need upside down and sometimes they need upright. Okay, a couple of other things. So just briefly, foam mat is one of the most essential things that you will need for sugar flower making. It will make the difference, that and a bowl tool. So this set is all one, which is really good. You can buy, again, you can buy bowl tools on their own, but this set's really nice because it kind of covers all bases for sizes that you're working on. I'll probably use this one tonight because it's proportionate to the size of the leaf that we're going to be working on. But if I was doing bigger leaves, I would just go to this bigger one here. You can see that. What was backwards on here? So it's much bigger. So obviously if you're working on a much bigger area, you don't want to be using some tiny little thing, because you're just going to be putting, it's going to take you longer to get around it, but also it's going to be putting like tiny little small indentations, whereas this surface area is much more appropriate for a bigger surface area petal or leaf. But for today's, we're going to use this one in the set, and we'll use it on the foam mat. So this is a set, I can't remember who makes this set, Carol, can you? The blue and white one? PME. So some of you will already have these, or you'll have seen them loads, and it might be that you're cool with the white one, but you've no idea what this one's for. It took me years to know what this one was for, and it just used to sit in the cupboard. Now I use it all the time and I teach with it. So that usually comes as a set. It's a few pounds, but you will, like, I have loads of these because when you're working on them, you'll be like using loads of them. So, but they will last you for years, and you can just, you know, they'll get like mucky and messy, and they'll get petal dust on them and stuff, and you can just wash them and they're like good as new. But I'll explain what the holes are for in the blue one later. If any of you have done my, in fact, if any of you watched the free tutorial I did in my group for the blossoms or the sugar hydrangeas, you'll know already what that blue one is for, and you'll have seen me using it. This one is the pink, so I know you'll love the pink. It's purple on the other side. So this is a bit of both. So it's a bit of a foam mat, and it's got the holes in as well. So you can kind of use that for both. And here's a pink foam mat. This is quite firm, this one, whereas this is much softer. So, so this is more like this one here, whereas the blue one and the pink one are a bit more firm. So we'll be using a bit of both to show you this evening. But I'll use the white one on here because the green leaf will show up nicely against it. Okay, so we've got our rolling pin, we've got our flower paste that's been conditioned and coloured, we've got our corn flower pouch, we've got our cutters and veiners, we've got our wires. Okay, I think we're good to go. So we're going to make some leaves, and Carol's back.
I know, it's the
You
last
found
time.
it, right?
I promise, I thought I had everything.
So the veining tool, there are other ways of attaching the wire, but I'm going to show you with the veining mat because again, some people might not know what these are for. So I'll show you how to use them, and then obviously you'll know and you'll be able to give it a go. So there's different size veins here, and that's really, again, just like the cutters and veiners and the wires, about choosing the right size vein proportionate to the size of the petal or the leaf that you're making. So for us, we're going to make some of these, and this vein here, we want the vein to go sort of 2/3 of the way up the back of the cutter, and that's where our wire will go. I'll show it on there. Okay. So we want the vein, obviously, we want a thick enough vein for that wire to go up. So obviously you can check that on there. So we're going to roll out onto this board. And then we're going to cut the leaf out. So we're going to roll out on here first, then cut out the leaf, and then we're going to pop the wire in. And then we're going to vein it and make it look amazing.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course you can.
Because we've got the grey veining board there, do we really need to use corn flour on that?
I've never used this particular veining board, so I don't know. We'll
It's
see.
the same material as the pink boards and the grey boards.
I've never used flour
Oh.
paste on my grey board. Yeah, I've only used sugar
Oh.
paste, so I don't, that's what I'm saying. We'll find out. I don't know. So I would just use it on this because it is quite warm in here, so it's a bit sticky because I've conditioned it. Flour paste is different to sugar paste.
I was just going to say you can use it, but the thing is you're going to roll it very fine.
Yeah. And I don't.
So
When I
you
first rolled
conditioned it.
this, it was
Yeah.
sticking and pulling away,
Yeah.
and obviously we don't want that. So I need it to stay in place. So as soon as you press it into that vein, I don't want to be lifting it out again and pushing it back in, because I want that vein to be really clean and obvious, so that that wire can go straight up the back of it. So
Angie Bradbury's asking a question, Rachel.
Yeah.
What do you think of the twiddle method?
I love the twiddle method. Yeah, I love it, Angie.
Just like, I'll read it out. I don't know what you mean.
Me and Angie know. Some of you will know. I love it. It's a really good speed up for me. Some people just don't get away with it at all. So yeah, but for me, when I'm doing wedding cakes, I will absolutely use it on, particularly on foliage when you've got a lot of foliage to make. But yeah, some people just don't get away with it and much prefer this. But this, for me, it does take longer. But if you're doing stuff for competitions, or if you're doing stuff where the back is going to be shown, the twiddle method might not be the one for you to use. So if you're doing stuff for competitions, you need to use this. You need to do it the proper way. But I find it a real time saver.
Well, this part now is Maureen Bailey's nemesis. She always has trouble with the wires. She tends to put them half in and half out.
Half in and half out. Okay. Well, we'll see if this vein's big enough for the wire, because I've not used this veining mat before. So you're just gently threading that up, and then you're just going to pinch it at the bottom, okay? So you can see we've got it about halfway up, and then it is going in this veiner. So there's a front and back to the veiner. So the indented bit is at the back, and the bit with actual raised bits on it is going to press onto the front. So we're lining the tip up and the base up with that central vein. Oops, I've just moved that.
So ladies, I
we're
know
gonna
a few of
press
you
down.
say that you keep freezing and the screen's gone on and off, but ours is absolutely fine down at this end. It must be the internet in your area. Yeah.
Okay, so we gently take it out the veiner, and sometimes with your veiners, depending upon your paste and how tacky it is, and also the veiner, the material, you might want to just slightly dust your veiner so that it doesn't stick and pull away from your from the wire. And then we're just using the ball tool to just soften the edges, and you can do this before it goes in the veiner or after. With this one, I'm just going to pop it back in again because I've lost a little bit of that detail with the ball tool. And then I'm just going to grab, so with my leaves, I always just set them in the dimpled foam. So this is perfect. So I'm just going to pinch that down the bottom and just leave it to set in the dimpled foam. And what we don't want with leaves is them for all to look absolutely identical, because that's just not how they are in nature. So you don't want them all, like, you could leave them to just firm up on the foam mat, but they're all going to just dry sort of pretty much flat and identical, which isn't ideal. So just by using a dimpled foam, some of them will just sit slightly differently, and you can just get that slight variation. So I've made some of these earlier today, and you can see there's quite a bit of variation in the movement on the actual leaves. And we'll dust those tonight and show you those. So these were made with the twiddle method because I was doing it really quickly. But the one thing I will say is that if you are using the twiddle method where you don't use the veining board and you create the veins separately and then attach them in the veiner, you must make sure that both parts, the petal, the leaf or the petal, whatever you're working on, and the twiddle are both really nicely conditioned. If you have got drying out flower paste at all, the two will just not adhere and your twiddles will all fall off, and you'll have leaves but none on wires. None of them will stay on the wires, which does sometimes happen, but you don't want them all to be like that. So I'm just going to do another one because I've just put some Trex into that. I'm just popping a bit of corn flour on there because it is still a bit tacky. Okay. So you don't need to roll the leaves out as thin as you would do a petal, for example, but also because we're ball tooling around the edge, and I'll just show you again the ball tool when we do this next one, because you're ball tooling around the edge, the middle part of and the body of your leaf is still slightly thicker, whereas the edge, which is what the visible edge, has been really thinned out and it gives the impression of a much finer leaf.
So Donna Vernon Millard is asking, what are twiddles?
I'll show you in a second.
Looking the same thing.
No, Lynn, no one's eating crisps, it's just Carol for this all.
Carol!
I'm doing all the work here, there's crisp eating going on.
Just to be quiet, but it sounds like it's going mad, isn't it? Can you hear it? Does it sound extra loud? You don't hear them normally, do you?
No, I don't usually hear it, but it does, they're making me laugh at this. It sounds like someone's eating some crisps only.
It's not. Sorry, it's me filling my piping bags.
I hadn't even noticed it.
No, but that's what I mean. Normally
I'm
you
hearing
notice
it well.
it, but because there's only you talking, it sounds massive. I'm deaf and even I can hear it.
So some veiners, this is quite a nice one because it doesn't, some veiners cut into your petal, so some veiners are quite sharp, or the vein bit is really quite deep and sharp and it will cut through your petal. So if you're struggling with that, just make your petal a bit thicker in the middle bit, keep it a bit thicker when you're rolling it out down this middle vein, or you can try a different veiner that isn't quite as sort of deep in the cut. So with the ball tool, it's important just to know that I'm not taking this fully onto the petal. So look at where the silver part of the ball is. That's wrong. So all that's going to do is create a ridge all the way, I'll show you, all the way around like that. It's just going to create a weird looking ridge. Okay? What we want to do is keep the ball tool half on the petal, I keep calling it petal, but you know I mean leaf, and half on the mat. And it doesn't create this, I don't know if you can see it on the back as well. Can you see there where the ball tool has almost created ball-shaped indentations in the back of the leaf, whereas this is nice and smooth, but you've got that movement still. So that's what we want, is the natural movement. We don't want this like pebble dashing it actually on the leaf. So make sure the position of your ball tool is half on, half off the leaf or the petal. And you don't need a lot of pressure. If you are going backwards and forwards a lot, you're going to create a ruffle. So if you're doing this, you will create a ruffled effect, which we don't want. On this particular thing, we don't want. So leaves are still quite flat. Then they're not typically ruffly. So if you see on these ones here, we've got no ruffles, but we have got shape. Because of how we've dried it, and we've created a slight bit of shape with the light amount of pressure that we've placed with the ball tool, half on and half off. But we haven't gone backwards and forwards over it to create a ruffle like you would do if you were making actual ruffles.
So Karen's asking, if you're doing small leaves, do you take the leaf right up to the top of the veiner?
No, you don't have to. I'll do one now. And then I'll show you the twiddle. the twiddle factor.
So all you want to know what twiddling is, just hold on a moment.
I'll get to it. I just want to finish with this veining board first, and then any questions about the veining board. So can you see that I've rolled it up and rolled it down, and then I'm from the middle, so I'm not putting any pressure on this middle bit. So the pressure is starting here. Here's the vein, and I'm just rolling out thinly from both sides. But there's still, I haven't rolled thinly in this middle bit because I still need that to be pretty thick. Not thick, but thicker than the edges. So I just roll out from the centre, but I'm not actually putting any weight with the rolling pin on that very centre. So I'm starting about here and here. And then flip it over. So we'll do a small one here. So with the small ones, you might be inclined to kind of go up at the top of the ridge that of the groove that you've created, but it's going to leave you with the smallest amount to get your wire into. So what I would do is still start down here, and you will end up with a vein at the top, like this. Okay, but that's fine because when we put it in the veining tool, that will disappear. Again, we're just going to go give it a quick ball tool before we pop it into the veining tool because that one was a bit thick.
Can you thread the wire in while it's still on the veining board?
You can, yeah. It's trickier, and I'll show you why in a second. It's trickier to position it because you haven't got as much control. So can you see that vein on the back? It's just turned into what this is. So even though we had that thick vein on the back, it's not there anymore. So it's just been compressed. We're just going to do half on, half off to create a bit of movement. So we've now got.
For ladies who haven't got a veiner board, Marie Wilson's saying, is what do you do if you don't have a veining board? Are you going to show them that part as well?
That's the twiddle.
That's the twiddle. Wow.
That's the twiddle, baby.
Go, ladies. That's the twiddle.
I feel like I'm really teasing you now. Let me just answer the question about putting the wire into on here and why I don't recommend that. If any of you do that and it works for you, then that's absolutely fine. But yeah, for me, one of the reasons why I'll show you my hand and finger positioning when I'm actually putting the wire in, and hopefully that will explain why. So we go down, so at that point this bit's secure, and then we go up, and then I'm just going to go out from the middle, start thinning off those edges. Okay, so we've got a nice clean, obvious. If when you're rolling that out, your rolling pin is pulling that paste back out again, what you'll end up with is a really like flattened, squished vein, and you won't be able to get your wire into it. Now, if you were trying to push that up there, it's really difficult to see what you're doing. This way, you have you've got all this excess paste as well to be dealing with. This way,
because you're doing the other one now, Sanaz says, could you show how far you thread the wire in more closely, please?
Yeah, of course. So, what I like to do is I can feel this side of the petal or the leaf, so that I can make sure I'm not poking that wire through. So I can feel if I'm getting close to the other side of the leaf. So I've got my thumb here, so that's kind of, I'm making sure, so I'm pushing each time, I'm pushing up to the tip of my thumb so I can feel it. And also underneath, I can feel it with this finger to make sure it's not coming through. So these two fingers here are kind of stopping it poking out backwards or forwards. Now this one I've threaded up to about here, so about halfway is adequate. But if you want, you can go, if you've got a really big leaf and it's heavy, you might want to go 2/3 of the way, but you don't need to go any further than that, especially if you've got a strong enough wire. So you can see that's holding its position perfectly, and it's gone up to here. That's halfway. Okay, so this bit here is still floppy. But remember, this has a setting agent in, and it won't stay floppy for long. Hopefully that made sense. So I'm just going to take some of the thickness out of there, And already I can feel this paste starting to, I mean, it is quite warm in here, but that's quite normal for the Squire's Kitchen one. You can recondition this sometimes just with the warmth in your hands, but if it really starts to go past the point of usability, especially if you're doing the twiddle, which we'll do next, you really need to keep on top of it with the Trex and just add a little bit of Trex back in, and you'll get used to what condition feels like and what it feels like when it's going past the point of usability. If you feel it going like that, don't try and continue, because all you'll do is make things that have got cracks in it, and when you come to dust them, they won't look great. Or if you're using the twiddle method, they just will fall off, the twiddles, as they dry.
Well, the ladies are really loving this demonstration tonight. They're saying you're a really good teacher.
Yeah, thanks guys. It's always nice to hear. So we've just ball tooled that, and then we're just going to pinch down that vein, and look at that lovely movement already in the leaf. So it's gone from being really flat to quite a natural shape, and it's obviously falling like with the weight of leaves normally do, and you can pinch that tip to make it pointy, and then just pop it into the drying mat wherever you want, and you just keep going and fill this whole thing. And what I tend to do is just have the kind of foliage that you use a lot of. So rose leaves, I go through tons of them, things like eucalyptus and ruscus, olive leaf, that kind of thing. I would just like batch make them. They will last for ages. So once you've batch made them, you could just, if you're not ready to dust them, you can obviously make these in stages. So I would then leave these to set typically overnight, and then they'll be really secure for you to then work on some more. These were made earlier today, so we'll see how we get on. There might be a few breakages, but it'll be fine. And you can come back to them and then dust another day. You know, if you've not got like a full day to be making sugar flowers, you can do things in steps and just let them set fully. And then you can either dust them all in one go and glaze them and then let them dry, then store them, or you can store them, you know, part way along the way. As long as they're set, you can pop them into a airtight container, away from dust or sunlight or anything like that.
Maureen's asking, what size wire do you recommend for leaves?
I like a 26 gauge. For most leaves. If I'm making something massive, like a big sort of tropical leaf, I'll obviously go for the much thicker wires, but it'll be a much thicker vein because it's a much bigger leaf. But yeah, for things like roses and eucalyptus and stuff, 26 is perfect. So I've just taken a bit more paste out, and you could really tell the difference between the paste that's been in the Ziploc bag and the paste that's been on my mat whilst I've been taking a few from it. So I'm just going to add in, if your paste is getting a bit dry, mix a bit of fresh stuff in with it, pop a bit of Trex into it, and it will bring it back. And for those first few that you roll out, they might be a bit tacky and might be sticking to your rolling pin a bit, so you might need a little bit of corn flour on it, but it'll only be for the first couple that you roll out. Okay, so we've conditioned it again, so we've got that stretch back, which is lovely. Just going to move this. So, twiddle method. Here we go. So for the twiddle method, you don't need the veining mat, so I'm just going to turn it around and use the other side of the board, because you can absolutely use this as just a little workboard, the back of your veining mat. And what we're going to do, I'll roll out a couple.
So Geraldine, the cake behind Rachel all will be revealed later.
Yeah, as well as my embarrassing story.
Can you just go that way, about that much?
Yeah.
With your boards?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Take your boards with
Not
you.
just me. I tend to spread out and use every bit of things when I'm working. Apologies. Okay. So I'm also using for this a Stay Fresh mat, because what we're going to do is just roll out the paste without any vein, cut out a few leaves, and then pop them into this Stay Fresh mat, which is perfect. So if you're making flowers, for example, like these peonies here, you're going to want to cut out sort of several of the same size petal, work on them, and then let them dry, and then move on to the next set of petals, the next size up. So you're kind of working in batches to speed things up. So instead of rolling some paste out, cutting out one petal or leaf, and then getting that to completion, and then having to go back and roll out again, you roll out a bigger piece of paste, cut everything out you need, bearing in mind how quickly you work. So I would obviously be fine cutting out more at once because I can work through them quite quickly. But if you're new to it, you might just want to cut out 2 or 3 at a time, work on those, really paying attention to your technique and the tools and the methods, because obviously you won't be quite as quick to begin with, and things will start to dry out. Even if they are on the Stay Fresh mat, things will still eventually dry out. Okay, so we're just popping a little bit on there because we just added that Trex in, and I'm just rolling this out to the same kind of thickness that we had before. So it's not as thin as as petals I would make, so I wouldn't roll this out quite as thin as like rose petals and stuff, because they're so much more delicate, and you're layering lots of them on top. So if this can be thicker because leaves are usually a bit thicker than individual petals anyway. Once you layer all those petals onto a rose, you don't want any chunkiness there building up and making it look sort of clumsy. So I'm just going to cut a couple of petals out, and then...
While you're doing that, can I just ask Carol a question?
Yeah.
Does whipping it up work with dairy-free, lactose-free butter?
I'm going to be honest, I've no idea.
See,
try it and let us know.
See, I've never tried it with that because I would have used that as a vegan recipe, but whipping it up isn't vegan, so I haven't tried it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. That's a good point, that though, isn't it?
Yeah, I could try. I'll have a go at that.
Have you put it in your phone and pick some up? We'll have a go at it. Have you got some?
Is that free from Fridays?
Yeah. Oh, is it just vegan butter? Is that? Should give a brand name?
She didn't give a brand name. She just said. Oops. What they said. Dairy-free, lactose-free butter, which is like your vegan, because you haven't got the milk in it, has it? Got the dairy in it, so it's a vegan butter.
I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Okay. So as well as cutting out the actual leaves, we're going to also, we've got 2 wires here. I'm going to show you 2 leaves, and this is the twiddle method. Let's hope it works. So this needs to be nicely conditioned, and we're just going to take a little bit of paste, and we're going to pop it on the end of the wire. Okay. And we're just going to take the thumb and the forefinger, and we're just going to twiddle it down the wire. Now obviously we want it to be proportionate to the size of the leaf, and knowing how far we want that to go in, I'm just going to pinch off any excess. Pinch and pull, and that's going to be our vein. So that's going into the Stay Fresh mat while we just quickly ball tool this around the very edge. Okay, and then we use the veiner to layer the 2 up. So this goes in first, this goes on top, so that's going into the vein of, the recessed vein part of the veiner. This goes on top. You can just gently press that down, and then you press down, and you're really paying attention to where that vein is, the twiddle. I might have pressed that a bit hard. And there it goes. No twiddle visible, okay? But that will only happen if your paste is properly conditioned. Otherwise you'll have a visible twiddle, and even perhaps a non-secure twiddle.
Nobody wants a non-secure.
Nobody wants, or a visible twiddle. Even worse.
Imagine if somebody just flicks past YouTube now and they're wondering what we're twiddling about.
I hope they do.
That's how you get more viewers.
Yeah. So I'm just popping on the overhead again, Simon. I'll just show another one. So we're just starting with some condition paste. Twiddle us down. Some people really just can't get this, it's like, if you're not particularly handy, you just might not be able to do that action. I don't know, but what I would do is obviously cut your petals out, have everything ready. You can't be dilly-dallying with this method, and like I say, everything needs to be really nicely conditioned at every step. You can't just leave things out and expect they'll attach, because you need that slight tackiness in both the leaf and the twiddle for them to stay attached at this point. And as the paste then dries out, if that isn't there, it will just detach, and that might happen to some of mine. In fact, I'll show you one of mine earlier, which I worked on too late. I don't know if you can still see. You can see a little bit of that twiddle there down the back.
Yeah.
Can you see? It hasn't disappeared fully.
Move it to you a bit. To you.
It just hasn't quite disappeared, and you can see it down the back there. So that's because my paste was drying out because I was rushing. Okay, twiddle's disappeared, and then we're just going to do one last ball tool for movement, and we've got that lovely movement going in the leaf. And it's a bit floppy at the moment, but that's because we really condition the paste. So we just pop it into the mat and it will dry. We just leave those overnight usually. If you're in a rush, then you know, you could make these on a morning first thing, and then by the afternoon you could be dusting them. But I would just leave it, if you're doing it on the same day, I would just leave it as long as you possibly can. But typically I would just leave, like, make mine up and then leave them overnight. But you could leave them obviously longer than that. So for example, if we weren't dusting these today, I could just leave those in there, pop a lid on it, and then come back to it whenever I needed them. They're great for just, you know, if you've got spares, if you've got some time and you've got a load of orders coming up, or if you've got, you know, a family wedding or something like that, and you don't want to be doing everything the actual week of the wedding, you can crack on with this stuff. Because things like rose leaves, if you're making wedding cakes, you're going to get through them, and it's, you know, such a common flower for weddings. So yeah, obviously.
So Barbara Ford is asking, I think she was, what make is your leaf veiner, please?
So they are both the Katie Sue ones. So it's the leaf cutter set of 4 from Katie Sue, and it's the multi-leaf veiner from Katie Sue as well. So you can obviously use that. There's enough detail in there if you wanted to use it for hydrangea leaves and things like that. So yeah, it's a good sort of starting veiner. Like I said earlier, there are loads, and it's, I think this one, if you find that you've cut through your paste before, this is one that I don't think, like, I've got some that even now, like, I cut through with them and I pick them up and I think, why have I used that veiner? It always does this, because I've got loads of different ones that I've tried from loads of different places, but this one isn't, the ridges on the vein are not, they're not too sharp, so then, you know, you're not going to have that problem, assuming that you've created that nice centre vein. But yeah, any follow-ups to the twiddle?
No, there was a couple of people here that said, what a great idea of the twiddle. Yeah. I mean, it definitely was a different twiddle to what I was thinking.
So did I disappoint you?
No, I thought when you said twiddle, I thought you're just going to get the plain wire and twiddle it up the paste.
Oh, right.
I didn't know you was going to put the twiddly bit on.
Yeah, you're basically creating the vein. You're creating the vein without
Did
having
you
to...
think about that before you said it?
Yeah,
I just go with it.
Say nothing.
Oh, dear.
That's a very good idea. That's a very
It was very good,
very
yes.
good. That a lot of people like that one.
It wasn't my idea. It's gone around for years, and it's a good time saver. And for people that struggle threading the wire into the vein that you've created in a veining board, it's a really good option for you. But you must remember to keep your paste super conditioned, or it just won't stick, and you'll be like, this isn't working, and you'll hate it as a technique. But make sure that your twiddles that you're creating on the wire before you combine them with your petal are not chunky. You don't want to be adding in a load of bulk, and obviously the chunkier they are, the more you're adding, the more paste you're adding when you put it into the veiner, and it has to spread and go somewhere. So if you've got really chunky, if you've not done them nice and fine, then it potentially will misshape your petal or your leaf when you come to squish it in the veiner, if that makes sense.
So when you say conditioned paste, when the ladies has asked, does that mean putting the Trex in it?
Yes. So it's putting the Trex in it, working it with your hands just to make sure it's nice. It's got a little bit of tackiness to it, and it's not dried out, and it's got that nice stretch to it, because we want things to stick to each other. You don't want to be using glue for this, because basically things will slip and slide. It's not an appropriate time to be using the edible glue on that. So you're just wanting the tackiness in the 2 bits of the paste, so the twiddle and the leaf, from the Trex and from the warmth in your hands to stick them together. And once they're stuck and you've got that nice invisible twiddle on the back, they should be absolutely fine. So some of these that will dust up in a minute, some of the ones that I made earlier today with drying out paste, this one in particular, because they're not fully dry, I've not let them dry overnight, we might have a few casualties, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to leave the veining board for now, and the Stay Fresh mat and the ball tool. And what we're going to do is dust up some of the leaves that I made earlier, and then we're going to finish them off with a couple of other techniques. So one of the other things that is essential, I remember when I've only entered Cake International a couple of times really early on, and I remember I made this cake and I thought it was the bee's knees. I was so proud of it. And you can get judges' feedback. This was before COVID, obviously, when you could go to places. And he said, oh, you need to use some petal dust on your flowers. And I was like, I really don't want to, because I tried that once and it was a disaster. And it just ruined my whole flower, and I'd spent like days on it. And so yeah, I really didn't know how to use them, and I was using way too much of it, and I couldn't get the colours right, and I was really heavy-handed, and it just destroyed my flowers completely. So you don't need to be massively heavy-handed with petal dust. And what I would say is, the first time you use them, I think it's easier to use them on leaves, because you can be a bit more heavy-handed with them. They are a bit more forgiving when it comes to petal dust, and you just don't need to worry about them as much. Also, you see how quickly it is to make one leaf. If you muck it up, you've only lost like a minute of time. If you start using petal dust on flowers for the first time, my experience was I'd spent hours and hours making a beautiful rose, and then I tried to dust it and I immediately ruined it, and it was hours and hours lost. Whereas this is just like a minute lost if you muck up a leaf. So foliage generally is a really good way of practicing the veining, the ball tooling, the dusting, using the wires, just using the paste. So because they're very forgiving. So I have a selection of petal dusts here. These are I've got a load of fractal ones here. I'm always going on about how much I love fractal colours, the gel colours and the dusts. But obviously there are other brands as well, which you guys will probably have seen on websites. So for the leaves, I have a selection of greens, and I also have browns, but you could also, depending upon what leaves you're trying to create in the season and the colour tones and stuff, you might want to introduce some like burgundy tones into the leaves and stuff as well. So, but it depends what you're creating.
Before you start that, Nikki's asking, is there a special way of washing your foam drying mat?
I think you can put them in the dishwasher.
Yeah, you can.
I've put mine in the dishwasher before. I don't want to officially say it, but I've put mine, because sometimes the dust colours and stuff can be quite difficult to wipe off, but you can pop them in the dishwasher. Obviously, they'll take quite a while to dry out though, because they're like a sponge.
And how long does Saraceno modelling paste take to dry?
It's completely different to the...
It is different. I've not used it for flowers, so I wouldn't like to say, but I imagine with any of my flowers, I tend to just plan on leaving them overnight before I then try and do anything with them. So yeah, I think if you do that, then you'll be fine.
Can I just say something about Saraceno?
Yes.
So Saraceno, there's a modelling paste, and then there's a gum paste, a flower bouquet paste.
Yeah.
So for your flowers, use the bouquet paste. Now, Saraceno do say you can use the modelling paste, but I actually took it out of our description because we had too many complaints of people saying their flowers would never dry.
Yeah.
And the idea they don't dry is Saraceno's wants it so you can still eat your flowers. So, obviously you've got wires in, you can't eat them. But obviously there's still some flowers you can make without wires.
Yeah.
And that's why they put it in. But I took it out that you can make flowers, but it simply just to stop people giving me earache about it. But if you want to use Saraceno, then you must use the pasta bouquet.
So there's some lovely greens in Fractal. So I've got the grass green here and the dark green, and you can just, this is the dark green, and this is the grass green. They also do a moss green, which is a bit more like a lime green, but also really nice. So what I'm going to do is just start with the lighter of the two, so the grass green, and I'm just going to, and I would use parchment paper on this rather than kitchen roll, because, and definitely do it on something rather than just on your worktop, because it is quite a messy job. You will be able to get it off, obviously, it's fine, but it is a messy job, and it's just nicer to just be able to fold this up into a neat little parcel and pop it in the bin afterwards. But if you try and use kitchen roll, this will basically soak into the kitchen roll. The kitchen roll will absorb it, and you'll end up using a lot more dust than you can. I can still pick that up with my brush. So any excess that comes off here, whereas the excess that goes onto kitchen roll tends, when you try and pick it up again, you're essentially rubbing it into the paper towel. So you end up using more. So we've just done like a first coat on there, and you can already see it's changed colour. And then with the darker one, we're just going to hit some highlights. So we're going to go down that vein and just start to create a little bit of depth. And just like at the base a little bit, perhaps a few on the edges, just where things catch. And this is where you can also, if you want things quite fresh and green, then you might want to leave it like that. It depends what kind of effect you're going for, really. If you're wanting something a bit more sort of aged, you might want to add a little bit of brown in to just sort of really deepen that vein in the middle. And on the occasional edge where it might catch a little bit, and just pick that out. Now, the next thing we're going to do with this leaf is steam it. Now, what I always suggest is that you do one leaf first. Make sure that once you've steamed it, you're happy with the finished colour, because steaming will set the colours, and it can change them slightly. It can make them more intense, it can darken them. So always just kind of do one leaf before you spend the time doing the whole set of leaves, and then steam the whole set of leaves and find out that actually they're much darker than you wanted, or they're not dark enough. Just steam one and make sure that mix of colours and that level of coverage is what you want. So just bring our steamer in. Just gonna, while that heats up, I'm gonna start doing another one. And this is a really easy job dusting these, because you don't have to be, like I say, you don't have to be really delicate with the application. It's basically, you're just dusting like the whole lot with the first layer, and then popping a few little bits of highlights on with the darker tones. So it's quick and easy and really quite repetitive. So it's a good way to practice the technique. But with the steamer, we're just going to lightly twiddle that in front. Word of the day. And it's just set the colour. So when we talk about setting the colour, when you're putting quite a lot of intense colour on something and dark colours, especially when they're potentially going on pale cakes, we don't want any dust particles potentially then, when you're arranging these on the cake, falling onto beautiful white icing that you spent hours perfecting, because it will really stick out like a sore thumb. So we want to just set the colour, and also when we come to glaze it in the next section, it means that you won't get loads of the dust coming off into the glaze. So I'll do the second one.
So I'm just doing that one, Rachel. Select time and ladies is due in tomorrow. As soon as it arrives into the warehouse, it'll go live on the website.
I get such good customer service updates on these lives. You would never get that anywhere else. You would never get this knowledge and this like level of updates about stock and stuff anywhere else. Okay, so I'm going to pop a little bit of brown on, just down that middle bit.
Well, thank you, Geraldine. She says, just loving this live.
Aww.
So amazing. Rachel has given up her time and knowledge all for free. How lucky are we, and how fabulous are S&C? Couldn't get that fabulous out there.
Were you getting a bit choked up?
Getting choked in.
Bit emotion. Karen's getting totes emotion. So what I would do, obviously, once you've done your first one out and you're happy with it, I would then go and dust the rest and then get them all in the steamer. Now, once you put them in the steamer, they are obviously a little bit wet. Do not do this unless they're fully set, because basically what will happen is when you add this steam back in, they'll go floppy again. Okay, so make sure they are fully set before you do this stage. And it just sets the colour, and we've taken it from this, which is just a boring bog standard leaf.
Absolutely,
to this.
to lifelike, isn't it? It's gone to lifelike, yeah.
And it really just adds that extra realism, and like people, like even my mum, like when I first started doing sugar flowers, she'd look at my cakes, my display cakes, she'd be like, so all of these are sugar then? She was convinced they were all fresh flowers. And I'd say, yeah. And then she'd go, but the leaves aren't sugar, the leaves are real, aren't they? And I'm like, no mum, all of it, because they just add, it just really does add that level of realism in, which, you know, and it's not a difficult job, it's just knowing the process to follow. But like I say, this is a brilliant way to get comfortable and confident with using the dust, because I don't want you to kind of go in all heavy-handed for the first time on like flowers that you've, you know, spent days on, because that happened to me and I nearly cried.
Really, or did you?
I might have cried.
You didn't really
Okay, I
cry.
cried.
You cried, didn't you?
I was really annoyed.
Laugh, Karen.
Yeah, she's
Mate, you're so mean,
so unsympathetic.
Yeah, it's just when she said I nearly
You
cried, I thought, no,
you can't show your true emotions in this
You
kitchen.
probably did cry, because I know, so I would have definitely cried.
I was angry because I was like, this judge told me I needed to be doing this, and now I've done it thinking, well, this is what the professionals do, and I'm like, I've got a load of stuff that I won't put on a cake now. So yeah, it was very frustrating. So I'm just going to show you this one just with the lighter colour on, without any of the darker, because you might not want the darker colours, you might prefer something, and obviously you can go totally pastel if you wanted. You don't have to go realistic, you can absolutely go pastel in your colour tones. So this is just a bit fresher now, can you see? Without the darker colours on the left that I added in, the darker green and the brown, this is just a bit fresher. So typically once you've steamed, I would pop these into a dummy so that they're not touching anything. You don't want these, I usually wouldn't put these down on here, but if there's any moisture in it, which there is, because I've only given them a light steam, the more steam you add, the more moist, the more wet the surface is going to be. So pop these in dummy or put them on your drying rack, but make sure that they don't touch each other because they will pull the colour away. So make sure that they're completely separated from one another until they're dry again. They don't take long to dry, but obviously, particularly if they're properly set before you do colour and steam them.
I mean, Carol Allen's got a little clothes steamer, would that work?
Yeah. I don't know how much steam comes out, how much volume comes out.
You can use the steam off your iron.
Yeah.
But you just have to be careful, don't you?
Yeah, you can obviously hurt yourself, so be careful. But I've used, before I had the PME tabletop one, which I now have everywhere, I just used to have a pan of boiling water, like bubbling away, on simmer, and just like have both hands going, like a little production line, because it was so much quicker, but
It's a
obviously...
quick way to get some war wounds.
Yeah, it is. Needs must, occupational hazard.
So a lot of ladies on here were saying about different dust. You can use any dust you want, can't you, on the leaves? You don't have to stick to a certain brand.
So be mindful of some of the brands, like the greens, for example, can be really quite vibrant. So don't always just go off the description. So I've bought dust off the description before and then used it and thought that is not what I was expecting. So some of the greens in particular can be really bright, like almost not natural looking. So be careful with the greens in particular. Like I say, these are some really nice natural looking greens from Fractals. So you'll be fine with these if that's the kind of look you're wanting. But some of them can be quite vibrant compared to perhaps what you might expect from what the colour is called. But you can take the vibrancy down by adding in a small touch of brown, just mixing it into your dust before you use it.
But the ladies are loving this. They're saying just the leaves are just coming alive. And Mandy Hardy said you've got her all excited now, ready to make leaves.
I'm not like people in my group laugh because when I do classes, because I love making foliage. I think it's one of the easiest things to make look super realistic, and I love using them in my designs on my cakes because you can create huge arrangements without having to make a ton. Like if you tried to create that coverage with roses or peonies or something, you'd have to make so many of them, whereas you can create real height and coverage and movement, like, you know, you can trail it and things like that you can't do with things like roses, which are, they just sit where they sit. There's no sort of movement with them. So people always laugh when I say I love leaves because they sound really simple, but I do love making them. But it's a really good beginner's sort of thing to try out all these techniques with. So yeah, I will always kind of suggest that people start off with something like a rose leaf, because the kit isn't expensive and it covers a lot of different techniques and bits of equipment and different materials that in one go, really.
Well, Debbie says her brother and her fiance only want foliage on their wedding cake,
Love
so
that.
that's great. Carol says she struggles with leaves, but this is fabulous. She's learnt so much already.
Love it. I do have 2 free sugar flower making demos in my Facebook group. So if you do want to do that, again, they're quite sort of simple, but they're great if you're starting out. And I do have some classes on my website that are pre-recorded. There's a set of 5 different flowers. If you're completely new to sugar flowers, I would perhaps go and watch the free ones first and practice those first before you pay to do any of the paid classes, because it will just give you the confidence to kind of go on and do those other ones. But yeah, there's if you're already sort of familiar with a lot of this stuff, or happy making flowers, or had a go at some already, then those pre-recorded classes might be worth a look for you.
So if Breeder struggles with wiring them, would you think that the twiddle method would be better?
Yeah, give it a go. I think just bear in mind keeping everything nicely conditioned, making sure you've got that slight tackiness in your paste. Practice the twiddles first before you cut out any leaves, to make sure that you're happy with the actual twiddle technique with your finger. Look at the state of my hands with your fingertips, and that you're not making anything too chunky or oversized. And then yeah, don't make the twiddles in advance. You've got to make them like in small batches. So to start with, perhaps just do one, cut out one leaf, make one twiddle. Make sure that you're comfortable with the technique and that your paste is good, and then you can perhaps do like 2 or 3 at a time and speed up. But yeah, once you get going with the twiddle method, some people don't like it. I'm not gonna lie, some people don't like it and they just never connect with it, and that's fine. We'll teach both, because that's so common in cake decorating. People won't necessarily. It's like with the ganache masterclass that we're doing in the autumn. We're going to teach three different techniques of ganaching cakes, because everyone has their own preferences, and there's not necessarily rhyme or reason as to why one person would prefer one method over another. So we're going to cover them all, and then you can learn them all and settle with whatever one suits you. And I tend to use different ones for different things, so it's good to learn the different techniques and try them out, but don't ever feel like you've got to do it a certain way unless it's for a competition, and then you need to be using the veining mat, because they are real sticklers. And if there's any risk of your twiddle being visible, they won't. They'll be like, what is that chunkiness on the back of that leaf?
So what's the name of your website again, please, Rachel?
It's www.ma for Marie Antoinette macakecompany.co.uk.
So it's
MA
dot
no MA Cake Company
Cake Company.
.co.uk. So you can, I'm adding a bit of brown into this, but you can add in like a burgundy colour, which is really nice. You can even do these. So in a class that I taught last year, a 2-day class at my studio, we did full, like there were these cutters and veiners, but we did them all burgundy, really autumnal, and they were absolutely stunning. A really deep, rich red burgundy. Yeah, I love them. Love leaves. So sometimes you can double steam things. So if, say for example, you can create a bit of waxiness by double steaming. So steam once, let it dry, and then go back and give it a secondary steaming. And that can sometimes, because some leaves don't have a sheen to them, but they have like a waxiness, like almost like a matte waxiness. So a double steam will give you that. Whereas other ones you might want to go and glaze, which we'll do now. So my rose leaves I typically will steam and glaze. Also,
can you remind us which colours you've used?
Yeah, so I've used the fractal grass green is the lighter one, then the fractal dark green, and then I've used fractal dark chocolate. They really do have a lovely range of dust colours. Even like some of the neutrals are like super lovely.
Fractal, I was the first one to introduce
I know
Fractal
you
to
were.
everybody.
You were the only person I could get them off for ages.
There's quite a lot of things that we were the first people to bring them to, and spent a lot of time and money investing in letting our customers see them.
This is the way. Yeah, I remember seeing them. I don't know where I saw them first of all. It must have just been on your website. And then I had no idea that you were just down the road.
Yeah.
I was just like ordering online and like I was like, oh, you can click and collect, and actually it's just 15 minutes away. It was completely bizarre. And I was like, how
companies all
amazing.
get launched via our website, and then before you know it, everybody else
Always,
has got it.
yeah.
But I think all our customers know that the first time they actually get to meet anybody is usually via us.
Yeah. I remember telling
And I
her that
will say Fractal are very grateful that we did help them.
they've got a great range, I have to say. I'm more than happy with them. I remember telling other people, like some of my other cake decorating friends, about Fractal. I was like, have you heard of this Fractal? I was like, you can only get them at Sugar and Crumbs. And like no one knew of them.
No.
Well, not in this country anyway. But yeah, they've added quite a lot of nice colours as well. They obviously keep growing with it. But so like I say, usually I would just go and dust all of these in one go, then switch the steamer on and just steam the whole lot in one go. But because I wanted some of these to be dry so we can get on to the next stage, I've done them one by one. Okay, I'll move that out of the way, unless you want a bit of a facial. Just give you a nice steam facial, Simon.
Thanks very much.
The spa. Okay, so your hands, your fingertips will be filthy, but it does come out. Usually as soon as I've done the dishes, that's when it comes out. Spent ages doing the dishes.
You saved a job.
It wasn't volunteering.
Oh well, the sink's ready with hot water. So you're fine.
Always. Is there a little? Have you got like a cupcake case or something? I could just pour some of this into.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll pass you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the glaze or confectioner's glaze or edible glaze, it might be. This is a sugar flare one. It's a nice big tub. You don't have to buy it in the big tubs like that if you're not going to use. Thanks, Carol. If you're not going to use a huge amount, a little goes a long way with it. So what I'm going to do is grab a brush and but it is essentially edible varnish. Okay, so it is sticky and it will stick to things. And you will need there is a confectioner's glaze cleaner for your brushes that you'll need to clean your brushes with. You won't just be able to run these brushes under hot soapy water and the confectioner's glaze come out. Like I say, it's like varnish. So the glaze cleaner is essentially like white spirit, I guess. It sounds so nice. Okay, hon.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the ones that I did first. So I'm just popping a bit onto my brush. And you can dip these in, but I find that I get loads on, and then when I come to stand it into the polystyrene to set, you get loads of drips running down the wire, and then your wires get sticky. But we're not needing loads on here, which is why I like applying it with a brush. Plus, people think it's quicker to dip, and it might be, but it's not been my experience, because when you dip it, you've then got to leave it stand like this, getting all the excess dripping off the end, because a thick layer goes on it. I'm just going to pop, in fact, I'm going to use my drying rack.
There's a dummy in the cupboard if you want a dummy.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, that is one there, yeah.
I just don't want it to drip onto anything. Because, yeah, when you're leaving these to dry, make sure that if there is any excess and it's going to drip down the wire, that it's onto something that you don't mind getting the confectioner's glaze on, because like I say, it'll be there a while.
So while you're doing that, Mo says, thank you, Carol. She would never have learnt about Nasty Porter or Suzanne Esper if she hadn't joined Sugar and Crumbs.
No.
There you go.
I can list you hundreds of more people.
I bet.
And Anne said her daughter's been showing the teachers the cake she made for her birthday, and the teachers asked where did she get the flavoured icing sugars, and she told them about this company.
There you go. Spreading the love. So we're just brushing it on lightly, and basically then we're just going to leave those in the dummy to set. And
How long does it? Someone's asking how long does it take to dry?
The confectioner's glaze,
Yes.
not long, but it depends how, you know, the temperature in the room and stuff like that. But this won't take that long. We'll be able to touch these shortly because I'm brushing it on quite sparingly. I don't want these to be caked in a thick layer of something. So yeah, we'll see tonight how long.
Is there a spray glaze that you could use instead?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, we do one with Cake Star called, it's called Shine, isn't it?
Yes,
Something.
it is. That's
Shine,
exactly.
shine.
No, is it called Shine? Is it glaze?
It is Shine something.
Yeah, of Cake Star. Spectrum Flow did one, but they've taken it off sale for a while, so I don't know what's going on with that. And PME do one, but PME haven't got any stock in at the moment.
So just be careful with the sprays because it, you know, obviously this is only going where I want it to. You know, when you've used sprays, whether they're lusters and it obviously goes everywhere. So if you are doing using a spray glaze, you need to be somewhere where it's confined. So try do it, you know, cut out the side of a cake box or something and do it in there. Pop the lid on the cake box and have one side and have your dummy in there and work in there, just like, you know, if you're airbrushing, just try and do that. So because obviously there is quite a strong smell to it, and it can get places. So just be careful with the sprays if you're using them, because they will disperse. But whereas this is a lot more localized, and because I usually have lots of stuff out, working on lots of different things at once, I obviously want my glaze just to be on the bits that I want them to be on. So I tend to just use this. But yeah, the spray one it will definitely be speedier, but just make sure that you've got the right setup for it.
It's called Cake Star Spray Shine Glaze.
That's it.
Got there in the end.
Like, yeah, Cake Star Shiny something.
Yeah. So is there anything else you can use except glaze that one of the ladies are asking?
Not to give this effect. You could give it a second steam. And a bit more of a steam, as long as it's properly set, so it's not going to soften your leaves. The benefit of the leaves, because we've left them thicker than you would do a petal, obviously not on the edges, they look super fine on the edges, but there's thickness to them that isn't in petals, where we're layering tons of petals, and any thickness in the centre would add unnecessary bulk, unwanted bulk. These have still got they're a bit more solid in the middle, so that you can give them a bit more of a steam than you would be able to do petals before they sort of started flopping again. So you can double steam and get sort of a waxy finish. So these have been steamed, it's set the colour, but this is still really quite matte, whereas if I gave this a really big second steam, it would start to have a little bit of a waxy finish to it, but not as glossy as the glaze.
Well, Vicky Buffum, she just said she used spray glaze over a brand new kitchen, over a brand new sink in the brand new kitchen.
Yep.
And she had to deny all knowledge of it to her husband.
It is sticky. It is real sticky.
To be fair, we have lots of cake artists when they've done classes here. They've taken the students outside and sprayed outside.
Once you know, you're all right. But it's just, you know, if you do it for the first time, just be careful with it.
I've done it here on this workshop. I've ruined a big patch.
Yeah, I can feel it now on my fingertip, and it's literally they're sticking like.
Yeah. Only on that pink board, we know it's you.
I'm not. That's why I've got the dummy and the grease proof. I'm like sweating here.
Start hyperventilating now.
Yeah, you don't got a magnifying glass.
So we're done with the glaze. The glaze is going away. Yeah, if you've got any excess like that in a cupcake thing or anything, it will soak through. So if you've got any excess, you can tip it back in or get rid of it, but don't just leave it on the side, because it will eventually soak through and go on to whatever work surface you're on. So yeah, please be careful of that. I'm just going to move that onto paper. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to one side while we talk about a few other bits of kit for flower making, and then we'll come back to those once that glaze has set up a little bit. But like we did with the steaming, make sure when they're setting that they're not touching each other, because if they touch and then you pull them apart, it will pull off that colour. And at this stage, because we've steamed it and glazed it, it's difficult to go back and add colour then. It just doesn't take in the same way. Which is why I want you to do one leaf and steam it first and make sure you're happy with it, because once you've steamed them, to go back and add colour, it doesn't add in the same way. It's not as easy to do. So yeah, just want you to do that test with one leaf first before you're happy. Okay. I'm just going to fold this up, because again, I've spilt so much petal dust in my life.
I thought you were going to take confectioner's glaze in. I am going to my board then.
No.
How many witnesses are watching? How many's on camera?
I've got 312 now watching this pink board.
Nothing to see here. Fine, beautiful. Well, everybody starts atting me. Like, okay, so a couple of other things to talk through, kit-wise. So we've got these and these. Let me get this mat again. And we will also show you this one, because I promised I would explain what this one was for. Okay, so polystyrene cones. So you might have seen these online as well and thought, I understand the concept, or even perhaps not understanding the concept, who knows. But this is what they're for. So for roses, for example, I would use these. They're called cone buds, and they're like a teardrop shape. And they're just polystyrene, and I would use them to create the centres for roses, for example. So I'll just show this on the overhead, Simon. So this is the centre of a rose, the beginning of a sugar rose, and in that is one of these. And this basically gets put onto the wire, and then we start building the petals around it. So you can make these from sugar and attach the wire to a sugar version of this, so you can make a shape like this out of florist paste and let that set. Now, because there's a lot of bulk in that, you would need to let that set for a good couple of days before you then started to do it, to make sure it's really attached and dried on that wire, or else as you're adding petals to it, there's a risk of it coming loose on the wire. However, so I would do that in a pinch if I didn't have any of these. But the drawback of that is that it's quite a bit of weight in that centre then. So as you're then layering on all those petals, you're then creating quite a heavy flower. And when you come to attach them on your cake, so here's a little yellow rose that I've made. So that started off like the other one, but obviously in yellow. As you then come to put this on your cake, it will then be really front heavy. So when you're putting your stem into your cake, sometimes these are at risk of falling out because the front is really heavy, or just pulling at the icing. So what we don't want is any flour to be really any heavier than it needs to be. So the polystyrene cones are a really good option, and I'm going to show you how you would prep that now. So here I'm going to use a green wire for this, so you can see it against the white poly cone, because if I used a white one, you're not going to see it as well. So I'm going to use, I've got some pliers and some wire cutters, which you can just pick up online. And what I'm going to do, this is a 20 gauge wire. So I'm going to push this through, so straight through the middle, like this. Okay? So finger on one side, push through on the other. And sometimes you hit like a little polystyrene ball. And try and get that as straight as possible. That one's a bit wonky, but what we're going to do is fold this down and fold this round so that they're nice and tight to the bottom, and then we're going to twist these round.
How do you know what size cone bud to use?
They do come in different sizes. So this size cone bud here would do the size of rose that I showed you before. Obviously, if you're wanting a bigger, more open rose, start with a bigger cone. yeah, just start with a bigger one if you want a bigger finished rose, basically. But this size here would be fine for this kind of centre. This one was slightly bigger to begin with, but you can just layer it up with the petals, and it will still end up being a similar size rose. You don't need to be super precise with it, but obviously the smaller the cone you start with, you're not going to be able to make a big open rose with a small cone to begin with. So this is kind of typically the smallest I would use, and just get the pliers and make sure it's really tight on there, so we don't want any movement. So I'll just show you again. So popping that through the centre. Oh, there we go.
And there's no need to colour the cone, is there?
No, the cone gets completely covered, so the first thing you would do is put a petal that you've cut out straight over the top of that, the top of the cone. You don't need to worry about the bottom half at this stage, but we just would cover that first bit over, so that when you look down into the centre, you can't see any polystyrene. So you'd put one straight over it because it's not going to be seen anyway, because these are then the next petals that go on. But the bottom you can see is still visible, but that's just the first really centre petals. When you then put the bigger petals on at the bottom, they're going to cover this bit as well. So you don't need to worry about, to begin with, you only need to worry about that top section. Okay, so straight through and fold down, make sure it's nice and snug, and then start to twist. And then you've got it nice and secure and it's not going to go anywhere. So some people I know will glue gun a cocktail stick into the bottom of these. I've done that, or even glue gun just a wire straight into the bottom. I've done that as well, but I have also had issues like with dahlias and bigger headed flowers where you're layering on a lot of petals, where eventually the weight has pulled the bud off the actual stick or the wire. So I much prefer this because it's really nice and secure. Just trim off your scraggy ends.
It is nice and secure. It's
Yeah,
nice and secure.
it's not going
really
anywhere.
is, yeah.
And you've obviously got that then to work on. You can keep it in your dummy while you're working on it, and you're adding your petals on. And yeah, but obviously you can obviously just pop a wire into the base if you want and secure it either with a hot glue gun or something like that. But like I said, for me personally, especially if you're making quite big flowers, the weight sometimes can pull those loose, and all of a sudden you've not got a wire or a cocktail stick attached to your flower, and you've not got a way of attaching it to your cake, if that makes sense. So this is the method I would teach, just because it's fail safe really. But I do know that people do it otherwise, and are perfectly happy with that too. So. Okie doke, so that's the polystyrene centres. They don't just come in the cone shape, they come in rounds. So like peonies, you might work on a round, and even they come in half spheres as well. So if you're wanting like a round shaped base to your flower but a flat top to maybe do like a David Austin rose, something like a half sphere would be something you might start off with. But that they all kind of work the same way.
So you would still wire the half sphere the same way?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So obviously you just halfway through whatever you've got, halfway through, bend it, follow the curvature of the bottom, and then twist and.
I just love that is so secure, that, because I've had it where I have put it on the cocktail stick or on the single wire, and you are right, it does fall.
Yeah, and like I said, like you could have spent hours working on it. I remember it happened to a dahlia on mine, and it was for a wedding cake, and I was just like, I have literally no way of attaching this to the cake now. And because it was such a big, it was like the size of my hand, this flower, because it was so big, I was trying to like royal ice the thing back in, and then like trying to like secure it onto the cake with royal icing, and it just was so heavy, and I just couldn't use it. So yeah,
it's a lot of hours there, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's, with something big like that, it's going to be missed. It takes up a lot of space on the cake, so it's going to be missed. Okay, a couple of other things. One of the first flowers that people do start out with, because it's so popular, like with the leaves, are roses. So this set of cutters here, which I think are FMM, it's always one or the other, I get confused. It's FMM, is a really good starter kit. So if I just show you on the overhead, Simon, just to show the sizes. So this set of 5 is this kind of starter kit that you get, but they also sell another set which is the big petal cutters, which is obviously for your bigger roses. But this set here would easily do these roses, and even slightly bigger. And I'll cut out a couple of petals and just show you how I use some of the tools, and then we'll talk about stamen.
And that set that you've got there, it's only £5.49.
Yeah, and I don't just use it for these, you can use it for other flowers as well. So this kind of shape is just such a classic petal shape that you don't just have to use it for roses. So when I did the wedding cake masterclass last year, we used it for quite a few different flowers, and you know, for a £5, it's a no-brainer. So if you're looking, you know, to start out and start building your collection, investing in something like this set is a definite for me. I think it gives you multiple options, and starting off with something like a rose is, you know, there's so many rose tutorials out there, so yeah, go for it. A couple of other bits of kit. We have here a frill stick. So these come in different sizes, so they're always the same length, but the pointy end and basically like a ball tool end, but they come in different thicknesses. So a bit like the ball tool, use the one that is appropriate for the size of whatever you're working on. So if you're working on something quite big, you might want to go up a size. If you're using something quite delicate, I think the smallest one is like less than ½ centimetre wide. So if you're working on tiny little like apple blossom petals or something like that, then a smaller one would be appropriate. So again, the appropriate size ball tool or frill stick for the project you're working on. And then this is the gem veining tool. You can't see what this is from here, so I will show you. But it's basically this is textured up to here, this section here. It's got loads of like random squiggly indentations in, and I'll show you on a petal in a second. So I'm just going to grab some florist paste.
Underneath you.
Oh, no, sorry. I've got some out already. I was like, I don't want to have to move that. So I'm going to use the pink foam mat actually, so that you can see it against the white. How are we doing for time? Not long. It depends what time we
Only 2
finish.
hours left.
Don't worry about it, you're fine. A few people already said it's going to be an epic again.
What? Is that in reference to me or just Sugar and Crumbs lives in general?
They went, oh, look at the time when you've only just done the leaves. This is going to be an epic live again. Well, you know us here, we like to show you a full job.
Yeah, it's not
just me, is it?
I'm not showing you. I'm not going to be making loads of flowers, by the way. I'm just showing you some petals.
It's me, isn't it?
Yeah, Simon's spot.
We go, oh, Simon's on camera, let's make it an epic.
Just for you, Simon. So with the petals, like I mentioned earlier, we will roll them slightly thinner than the leaves, just to make sure that we're not adding any unnecessary bulk, because obviously you'd be layering these on top of one another, and you'd be doing layer after layer after layer, and we don't want it to look clumsy. So can you see I can start to see my fingers through that paste? That's when you know you're getting thin enough. You can use a pasta roller for this if you've got a pasta roller at home, or an attachment to your mixer. Pasta rollers are great. I wouldn't necessarily bother with it for leaves, but for the petals, I think it's a really good way of taking a lot of the work out of this bit and speeding things up, because you could just do a whole thing of paste and then pop it in your Stay Fresh mat. So you could do a whole long stretch of paste, cut it in half, pop one half in your Stay Fresh mat, work on another half and cut those petals out, and then you've already got the next set rolled out and ready to cut from. That's assuming that you're working at a speed. Okay, so I'm just going to cut a couple of these out and show you. I'll work on the bigger ones so it's easier for you to see. but I will also show you the difference that you can make with the frill stick and the ball tool, and just that technique again.
Well, Geraldine's shocking the ladies on here because everything that you've shown so far, Rachel, she says she has.
There you go.
As a surprise. She hadn't either.
We knew somebody would. We knew there'd be somebody.
And they're all in the packet still.
Well, not any longer, Geraldine. Needs to get sorted. Okay, so starting with this one petal, so I'm just going to use the ball tool on this one. Again, half on the mat, half off the mat. And already you can see that we're creating some nice movement, but I'm not going backwards and forwards. So I'm doing smooth movements. I'm not going backwards and forwards in the same place. I'm not wanting to make it really ruffly. So rose petals do have movement, but they're not ruffly typically, unless you've got like the centre of a David Austin rose or something like that. But can you see, I'll show you the before. It's going to be quite subtle to see this on the overhead, but can you see the difference in thickness? Somebody say yes.
I think so, yes, I can.
So on that edge, we've got a really fine edge here.
Yeah, I can see it now. Remember, we're behind you.
Oh yeah, you are, yeah.
Yeah, but nobody else is.
And this one hasn't been so, and also just the movement in it. So let me pop that one down. Now I'm going to show you with the frill stick. So the thing I like about the frill stick is that you can just pop a finger on the bottom of the petal and really make this petal much bigger and also thinner at the same time. So even though I've only got a cutter up to that size, I'm immediately making a petal that's much bigger. I've kept it the same shape, so it hasn't lost its shape, but all of a sudden it's completely different size. So you could use this same cutter for several layers on your rose and still get the bigger size just by using the frill stick and really pulling out from the middle. So not just concentrating on the edge, but pulling out from the middle. You can also use this to change the shape. So when I said earlier you can use these cutters and multiple cutters for multiple flowers, this is how. So if something isn't quite the right shape, just use your frill stick or your ball tool to change the shape of it by concentrating on a different, that one's a bit dry now, but I'll show you on this one. Concentrating on a particular area. So say for example we'll use the ball tool to thin it. Then you might want it to be, instead of this rounded top, you might want it to be a bit more pointed and a bit of a longer petal. And all of a sudden you've got a different shaped petal altogether. So this rounded shape has gone and we've gone elongated. So you can use these tools to get more out of your cutters and not have to buy specific cutters. So if you've got a flower and you're looking at the petal shape and you're like, well, it's nearly there, but it's not quite the right shape, you can go, it's all right, because I'm going to make it the right shape with the tools I've got. These two tools which don't cost a fortune, and you can just create the shape you want with a few seconds. You've now got the petal that you wanted, without having to specifically go and buy like another 10 sets of cutters.
Well, Annette Lawson is asking you, Rachel, what do you think of the 5-petal cutter? Do you like it?
I use it for some things, so I use it for my ranunculus flowers, but I don't use it for roses. I prefer the individual petals for petal cutters for roses, just because it gives me a bit more flexibility with placement of them, and sometimes I will add 5 petals into a layer, into a row. Sometimes I'll add 6, sometimes I'll add 7, sometimes I'll only add 4, depending upon how big I've made them and just what looks good. So I don't, for the 5-petal cutters, for me personally, they can sometimes make things look a bit too uniform. But I will use them for things like ranunculus, where things are literally going round and round and round, because they do speed things up, obviously. So, but yeah, I have tried them and I've got loads of them. But I will, yeah, for my roses I tend to use these separate the separate set. But that is my personal choice. But look at the difference in the size that we started off with and this one here. So you can keep it that kind of size and just thin the edges, or you can change the shape, or you can go a little bit bigger, or you can go much bigger. And our paste was relatively thin to begin with, but the thinness of it now, that's the kind of thickness you want from a petal. You want it to be paper thin. If you leave it like this, where it's still quite, there's no transparency to it whatsoever, then and try and layer those, and you just thin the edge and try and layer those up, you're going to add a lot of bulk. By the time you've added all your rows of petals, you're adding quite a lot of bulk in. So I would always try and thin them out as much as you possibly can. So the veining tool, I'm going to show you now. So like with the leaves, you can get silicone veiners, and there's loads of, rose silicone veiners out there. Or you can use this veining tool from Gem. And basically once you've thinned it out nicely, we're just going to go from the center, and we're just going to roll that over on the foam mat. And can you see how it's got a vein texture in? There, you can see that, can't you? So then I would just go back and pop, because that's flattened the edges a little bit, so then we go back in and create that movement, that natural petal movement with the ball tool. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on with this. It's half on, half off, and I'm just lightly going round. You don't have to be digging in, but use the approach. If I tried to do it with this, it's too targeted and for the size, and it's creating like little ruffles because it's much more intense pressure. Whereas with the bigger one, the pressure is spread out more evenly, and I'm just doing sweeping movements. I'm not going like this and then onto the next bit. On peonies and things like that, where they're way more ruffly, that's absolutely fine to do. But on roses, we want more sweeping movements and not going over the same area loads, just to create that bit of natural movement. And then if you wanted to, you can curl those back a little bit and then let them set. And what I typically tend to do, depending on how quickly your paste is setting, you can just get a fruit tray. So I just pick this up from the supermarket, just go in and ask them, there's always these empty waiting to be popped in the recycling. Just ask someone on the fruit and veg department if you can have one. It's just one less for them to take away. And you can just pop them in the fruit drying mat to just firm up enough. And depending upon the paste you're using and how humid or warm it is on that particular day, different times of year will take different amounts of time, but it kind of becomes a little bit waxy in its feel, and that's when it's absolutely ready to go onto the flower, where you can still maneuver it, but it's not floppy, so it's going to hold up to its shape a little bit, whereas at the moment it's just really floppy. So you would leave that in your tray for a little bit, and you just have to keep checking on it. So on any given day, it might be different to what you did last week. So you just need to keep checking on them and go, right, they're kind of taking a few minutes, or they're taking about 10 minutes. But that's the kind of time that you would expect, and then you'll be able to put a layer on. But as you're waiting for those, you can get started on the next layer, and then it becomes a bit of a production line. So there's a couple more other tools there. So these are always in my kit. The other one we've not talked about is this Dresden tool.
Can I just ask Carol a couple of questions? The Sugar and Crumbs cone buds, Carol, are we getting any more in? Because we know we have patchwork cutters in. Are we getting any more of Sugar and Crumbs?
I'm trying to get some. It's like everything at the moment, trying to get everything signed hold us.
And also grass contact paper.
Grass contact paper, I only wish I could get it.
There we go. Sorry ladies, you heard that straight from Carol.
Yeah, I've been trying to get that for a long time as well.
And Rachel, what size cone did you put on the wire, please?
It was a patchwork one. Let me just check.
We have got the patchwork cutters ones in stock. I did put the link on here before.
The 30 mils. It's a pack of 15.
Do you want to send me a text message, Karen? I'll show you something.
I'm writing it as I'm saying.
So I'm just going to show you the Dresden tool. So there's a Gem one which is a bit more pointy. And this is the PME one. This you'll see, like, you get the tool sets from PME where you get them in the caddy and stuff like that. That's usually in there. So some of you might already have that and not know. Let me just show you.
We sell that PME caddy, it's excellent.
Yeah. It's got loads of different things in, but a lot of the time, like, people are not quite sure what half of them do.
No.
So it's like you use maybe like 3 of them, and then you like wait to find what the others do. So, but the Dresden tools, either one of them, the PME one or not the gem one. The gem one is a little bit more pointy, so sometimes on some I'll use the gem and it'll be perfect, and on others I'll use the PME, depending upon like what I'm trying to do with it.
So Lynn's got to go off now, which is absolutely fabulous live, Rachel.
Oh.
Thank you. She's going to watch the rest of it tomorrow night.
There you go. While the football's on. Are you doing a live tomorrow night while the football's on?
No.
Oh, I'm doing one.
You're doing one.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'll watch that while the football's on. I was like, no.
What time are you doing the live?
I'm doing a live at 5 o'clock because that's what time my husband told me the football was on.
It kicks off at 5 o'clock.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm doing a live tomorrow on, it's not a demo, it is about, because I had my environmental health audit 2 weeks ago, and I've been running now for 10 years, so I've had loads of them, and I shared it in my group, and loads of people said, oh my god, I've registered and I'm still waiting for mine, and lots of people are obviously worried about it. So yeah,
It can take years.
yeah. Mine's been quite quick though in Stockport. So I registered in the summer because we moved house, ripped out the kitchen, so I had no kitchen, wasn't doing any cakes during COVID. Then as soon as the kitchen got sorted, registered. So I think I registered back end of last year, and I've had an in-person audit 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I'm doing a live all about that, talking about my audit and what to expect, and you know, where to go for resources and how to prepare for it, because a lot of people, I didn't realise, because it's been ages since I had my first one, but obviously a lot of people are not sure what to expect or how to prepare for it, and it can be scary. So yeah, I'm just going to do that and answer people's questions on it, really. So that's tomorrow at 5 instead of football, if you want to join me. So the Dresden tool, basically, the pointy end is great as a basically substitute for your fingers when your fingers are too clumsy to touch things. So sometimes if I'm trying to get really thin petals out of a veiner and I don't want to like pull at it because I might stretch it, I will just kind of gently tease the edge loose with the pointy end of the Dresden tool. The other side, the flat side, you can use to basically create movement by dragging down, and look how that's created. So whether it's on ruffles or petals, you can then pull in from the sides and create movement on your petals and curves. So this is great for peonies where you're really wanting things to be all like curling in on themselves, so it's brilliant for if you're wanting to create movement with things, instead of having them sort of just flat. And it means that you don't necessarily need a veiner. So yeah, just sometimes with leaves I'll just pull down from the very end, like just from the very end, pull down, and it just curls the leaf up. I've mangled this one now because I've done it a million times, but yeah, it's a really versatile tool, and it's always in my kit. So, and again, a couple of quid. Okay, the last thing I want to just talk about before we tape the leaves together is stamen. So I had no idea what these were or how to use them for years. And whilst many of you might know what stamen are, if you know, gardeners and keen with flowers and stuff, I had no idea. So these are all the culprit ones. There's more in the range, but it can be a real mystery with stamen. I found it really difficult to kind of know what it was I was buying and how to decipher between the different options, and also how to then actually, how did I take them from this format into something I could actually use on a flower, incorporate into a flower. Do you want me to move that?
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't want you to drop those.
Thank you.
Beautiful cupcakes, and I didn't want them to go on the floor. There's loads of different types, and it might not be obvious as to what they are, but some of them, for example, are, so these are the, they all have different codes on the back, but the codes aren't usually listed actually in the product descriptor, but if you search for the code online, it will come up, and with stockists. So these tiny, teeny little ones here are called microstamen, and I'll show you against some bigger, chunkier ones here. So see how tiny those individual stamen are compared to these ones. I'll just take these out of the pack. They can be expensive, but for the majority of flowers, you don't need a lot. It's only when you come to things like the peonies where you've obviously got, you could use a full pack per flower of these stamen, but for a lot of flowers you don't need a huge amount. So the black ones you would use for like anemone centres, which, you know, are pretty much the only ones I use the black ones for. Let me just grab these other tiny delicate little flowers. And these little blossoms here, you can see, have just got a small handful of the small microstamen in the middle. Oh, you better see it that way. Can you see those? So these beautiful tiny little bits of stamen right in the middle, and they're these microstamen. Okay, so they go from like these huge ones and to the tiny teeny micro-headed. There's round-headed, there's pointed-headed, and it just depends on what project you're working on again. But I'll show you these ones here. So these are the pointed-headed ones, which are huge. So those I would use for like the centre of a peony, for example. I would just paint them with a bit of edible paint. These are pointed-headed, but tiny. Okay, these are round-headed. So you can also get these pearlized as well if you want to add some like metallic centres to your flowers. And obviously then you've got the micro ones, but there's loads of others. So it just depends what you're working on. But I'm going to show you how you would actually make them into a flower centre. So this is kind of the centre of the peony. And you can see I've painted these. I'm not going to do that today because you can obviously paint them whatever colour you want. But I'll show you with these bigger set so that you can see what we're doing. Okay. So they can be a bit fiddly to handle, and you just have to persevere. And I'll show you with the green wire again so you can see the green wire in contrast to the actual set of stamen. But try and bunch them up as evenly as you can, and this is where sometimes you can just drive yourself a bit mad trying to get them all lined up. And with a big bunch like this, it's not as important because you can sort of alter them, adjust them a little bit afterwards as well. So I'm just going to grab another 26 gauge wire on this. And I've tried to get my stamens sort of fairly even both ways. And then I'm going to take the wire halfway across, bend it over. You can bend it over a couple of times. And then we're just going to pull those up together. And then do the old wire twist again. So keeping this hand really nice and tight on those, holding them in place so they're not slipping and sliding around as you're securing the wire. And you could obviously do this with a big bunch, or you could do a couple of individual bunches and then tape them all together. It's totally up to you. Okay, so once you've got that secure, just grab the pliers to make sure they're really nice and tight. I'll just turn it the wrong way and start undoing it. Okay. So then you've got a nice bunch of stamen, and you can just, because these are wired, but they're really a much softer wire than the florist wire, you can just kind of adjust them a little bit and bend them into place. Now obviously if you've got white stamen, I would use white wire. If you've got dark stamen like the black stamen, I would use the green wire or black wire. I've used the green here so you could see it in contrast to the actual white to see where it was going. But then you just adjust those, and then obviously that can be the centre of your flower. And then when you've made all your individual wired petals, you would then, once they're set, you would place these under here and start taping the whole thing together. But obviously the size of the bunch that you create is dependent upon the size of the finished flower that you want, and obviously the size of the actual stamen. So on these ones, I think we've used like 3 individual stamen. We've bent them in half, so then we've got 6 little stamen in the top. So these ones are a little bit more tricky. I'll show you with the green wire again so you can see. If the stamen are even thinner, got one here actually. If the stamen are even thinner, then you would perhaps be okay using an even thinner wire. Let's just see if I've got one. Yeah, I've got one in white, so we'll do that. I'm just going to clip some of that off because I don't need all of that. Okay. So obviously the fewer that you're using, the easier it is to make sure that they're all lined up. But just get your wire across halfway and bend it over. Make sure they're the right height and then start twisting. This is slightly too thick, this wire, for the size of the stamen, so I'd probably go a bit thinner, so you could go like a 28 gauge on this or even a 30 gauge. As you can see there, it's just that loop there is a bit, you've got to really then press that in tight. So yeah, I think probably a thinner wire would be needed on this tiny one. Let me just see if I can close the gap. But then what I would do, which we're going to come on to in a second when we tape the leaves together, is just get some florist tape and secure those in place. Whoops, that's just escaped. So I will talk more about the flower tape in a second because we're going to tape the leaves together. But if you take the flower tape up the stamen slightly and then back down the wire, all of a sudden they're nice and secure, and you can just pull them apart a little bit. If your fingers are a bit clumsy, you can use your Dresden tool to just do that, or even like a little pair of pliers or tweezers. And then there's your little centre. So that's what stamen do, and that's how to use them basically. But they were an absolute mystery to me for years, and I ordered some because I thought, oh, I'll give that a go. And then they don't come with any instructions, and I had no idea. And this was before YouTube or any online kind of schools at all. So they remained in a drawer, a complete mystery, for far too long.
I agree with you.
So we are going to tape these leaves together. So they're set now. They've got a bit of a glaze on them. I don't know if you can see that on the overhead, Simon. Can you see that glaze now? Yeah, it's picking up there, isn't it? Beautiful.
Yeah, lovely and shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want more of a shine than that, you can absolutely add a second layer of glaze on if you wanted. It just depends again on the project that you're working on. So yeah, just depends. So flower tape. It's a bit of an odd one because you first look at it and touch it and you're like, it's not sticky at all. So to activate it, it kind of has glue on one side, and to activate it, you just pull it gently and it will stretch. And by pulling it, you are activating the glue. So whatever size piece you tear off, for example, you start this size and you just pull it, okay? And then it starts to get, can you hear that tackiness? Okay, so don't try and use it without activating the glue and stretching it, because it just won't hold anything together and you'll be like, this is rubbish. Okay, so we're going to start at one end.
This is, now, I think this is a couple of ladies who have trouble in wiring the leaves together.
Oh, I see, right, okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with one on the very end. So that's our leading leaf. So I've just started, instead of trying to start up here, because it can be a bit fiddly, start further down and go up. So because if you're trying to secure it up here, you can be a bit all fingers and thumbs, and you can be damaging the leaf or the petal that you're working on. So I always start a bit down here and work up to the flower, because you're not going to do any damage to anything down here. So next thing I'm going to do is just, this one's still a bit tacky actually. I've got a couple of leaves here that are still a little bit tacky. Okay, so I'm not starting right at the end. I'm just starting a little bit further down where it's a bit safer. And you might find that your fingers are getting a bit tacky here, so just give them a quick wipe on a wet cloth if you feel like they're sticking to things. Okay, that's just snapped off, but you can continue with the same piece of tape. So I'm just going to add this one in. So slightly further down, just offset obviously with some foliage, it's like, you know, they're mirrored left and right. But with the rose ones, I quite like them slightly offset. So you've got a leading one, then slightly further down, and so they're kind of in pairs once ignoring the leading leaf. They're kind of in pairs, but slightly offset from each other. Keep your tape somewhere that's, you know, once you've opened your pack of tape, this will come wrapped in plastic. Once you've opened it, it will dry out. So if you've got this hanging around for years and you come to try and use it, even if you stretch it, it just might be dried out. So yeah, I've had rolls that I've just had to throw away because they've just been hanging around far too long, and the stickiness just isn't there. Okay, it's moving around a bit. Just going to put that. Okay. I want to be a bit careful with these because they're still a little bit tacky. So at this stage, what I might want to do is add in one of those thicker wires just to kind of sturdy it, because we're putting some bigger leaves in now and it is going to get a bit heavier, and we don't want that stem just to kind of be flopping around. So I'm just going to secure that in, and then we're good to carry on adding. So just bend the wire into the position that you want it.
So Liz is asking, do you need to individually tape each leaf before assembling them together?
You don't need to. So these are being assembled quite close to the main stem. So there's very little of the original wire from the leaf showing. But some are obviously, they're kind of further removed from, so they will have a main stem and then they'll have individual stems before the actual leaf. And if that was the case, if that was a kind of foliage that you were making, then yes, I would do that. But if you're attaching them really quite close to the main stem like we're doing here, don't bother, because you're just, it's a waste of time really, if it's going to be hidden anyway. So we're just adding these in. And obviously as you get further down, you're adding in bigger leaves, you'll have to leave more of a gap. Like you'll have to tape further down before you put your next set on, because they will obviously take up more space, if that makes sense. So if we try to then put that in there, it might be too close to that one. So we might want to go a bit further down and just spread it out a bit more evenly. But it's up to you.
So a few people here are saying, like Gemma says, she's done both your classes, and the way you teach is great. You teach us so much, and so clearly, it makes her feel like she can try these things.
Definitely try these things.
And Tracy said you're such a wonderful teacher.
Oh, thanks, Tracy.
You're never the best, aren't you?
Making me blush.
That's why you should all join the classes, ladies. If you've not joined, go and join.
I can't wait for you to see what
Our
Carol's been. Are
prize.
you going to show these in a minute? These that you've been working on. They're amazing. I'm like, keep looking to my right. So I'll just keep adding these on, but I'll just talk about the cake behind me. No, this side. So this wedding cake, I keep doing the wrong side. This wedding cake, I'm like, no. This wedding cake here is one that we've designed specially for you guys for the wedding cake masterclass, which is in November now. So I'll be basically teaching a full day, and we'll be going through all the decorative techniques to create that cake design, and I'm sure there'll be extra things in there as well. But yeah, there's going to be loads in that. So Simon's going to photograph it later, and so we can get that on the website this week, I think.
Sorry, ladies.
It's all right.
Karen's got me in the cupboard now.
Karen.
Determined there's something in here that I can't see.
So that one's still a bit soft, and I've pulled it off the wire. So if that happens, do not worry. If you've taped it in already, just get your pliers and pull the wire out.
They look amazing.
They're absolutely beautiful.
Oh. So they are moving about a little bit, because like I say, I did only make them today.
Is this masterclass for this cake behind you online?
It's going online. I just need to, we're just getting it photographed and all the details sent over. It probably will be in the next week, I think. Yeah. But The ganache one, the ganache masterclass is online already. That's happening in October, and this one will follow that. So yeah, we just need to get it photographed and a few other bits done, and it will be on. But yeah, that's we'll obviously be working through all of that. So if it won't be sugar pasting or anything like that, because we've got that covered in another class. So it will be starting with a fully sugar pasted cake to start with, and I'll show you a bit of a close up at the end. And on the overhead, Simon, just to show that finishly. There we go.
Wow,
and you can see, obviously, like that's giving you height that, you know, you'd have to make probably four roses to cover that same surface area on a cake. And you know, 2 of those, one slightly bigger, one slightly shorter, would just be absolutely beautiful together. But then I do love leaves, so like I keep saying. But yeah,
they were laughing before. Someone says, "Karen, does she really like doing leaves?" I think so.
I really do.
But you must like doing them because it's part of your business, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I love doing
them.
them.
Stuff looks spectacular.
It's the bit where you dust and take together. For me, it's like they really come to life. And to think that I used to not turn my nose up or even dread, but I just used to not see the point in dusting flowers and petals, because I just found that it ruined them, and now I'm like, how can you not? Because it totally transforms them. So yeah, I would always start off with something like a leaf, because they are really forgiving. You're not going to wreck something you've spent hours on if you know, a bit heavy-handed, or if you get the wrong colours, or if you steam it too much, or if one comes off the wire, it's fine. It's still fine. So yeah, and it's nice and secure because we put it on a thick wire, and obviously you could continue taping that all in green so that it all continues down, and you can even dust the tape if you wanted. So if the colour tape isn't quite the colour that you want, then you can just go along with some of your petal dust at the end and just change it slightly. So if you want it a bit more brown, but you don't want the dark brown tape because it comes in all different colours, you can just add a little bit in there with your dust, or if you want to lighten it a bit, the same. So yeah, but obviously the other ones that I've got, the other free ones are, we've got the spring blossom one, and I've got another one on the website. I can't remember what that one is now, but yeah, you can obviously go and have a look at those. Sorry, not on the website, in the Facebook group. But give it a go, and obviously don't be frightened about ordering some of this stuff, or even if you've already got it, just getting it out, having a go with it, trying out the different tools that you might not have really realised what they're for. The other thing, quickly, to just tell you about is this, so I'll just grab a quick...
Got that out before, you said I'm getting this out now.
No, I just saw it then and I was like, oh. So, this mat here is what's called for the Mexican hat technique. And let me just grab one of these cutters.
The fruit tray that you've got your rose petals in, what did you clean it with before you used it?
Just with a cloth. It's cardboard, but it's pretty thick, and you can get ones that are like polystyrene, and it's food grade because it's had food in it already. But I just, just like a damp cloth like I'm using here. Where's it gone?
Just got to go down the supermarket and get them at the right time.
Yeah, you do. And like,
I don't appreciate you taking them out of the tray though.
No, they don't. But I have done that. I have done that.
I'm not very impressed with that.
I did it once with my husband with me, and he was like, "Oh my god, you can't do that," and I was like, "Yes, we can. It's fine." The first time I did it, I went to a market stall and said, "Have you got any?" You know, they just had them all piled there. That, you know, it's just stuff they've got to get rid of. So yeah, they were fine. But yeah, just if you're worried about it, just ask someone. But I've never had. Obviously, I replace them every now and again, and I've never had anyone like tell me off or anything. Okay, so this is the Mexican hat method. I'm just going to. You will need a little bit of corn flour on your fingers here, because we've pushed that paste into there. We don't want to pull it out again. A bit like creating the vein. Once it's in there, we don't want to be pulling it out and squishing it. Then just use your rolling pin. And this is again where your ball tool can thin that out quite nicely, or you can use the frill stick, but I would use the fatter frill stick, slightly fatter than this one. But we're just really wanting, so we've got basically a bit of paste that's formed in this hole here, which I'll show you in a second, but the rest of it is nice and thin. And basically when you turn it over, it's supposed to look like a Mexican hat. which is a bit odd, but anyway, that's where the name came from. So this is basically to create flowers like with cutters like these, which is a lovely little set. It's like a blossom set from what company is this?
Blossom Sugar Art.
Blossom Sugar Art.
I have just got a couple of questions as well.
Yeah.
Debbie's asking, how would you arrange foliage around the circumference of a cake?
On the circumference of a cake. I would just make sure it wasn't on really, really sturdy wires, and just bend it into a almost like a wreath shape, and just keep taping it together.
And how would you make a dewdrop on roses and leaves?
Piping gel.
There you go, Teresa.
Okay, so I'm just going to grab a wire here. So I have cut out my petal. So I turned it upside down so that the pointy bit that was in the mat, formed in the mat, was upside down. I don't know if you can see that on the overhead side, Simon. Turn it upside down. That's the flat side. Poke it out with your Dresden tool because our fingers can't get in there. And then onto the mat. So with the wire, I'm going to get my pliers and I'm going to create a tiny hook in the end. I'm just going to fold that over and create a tiny hook. Okay. Then I'm going to pop it back into the next sized hole up. So if I try and push it back into that one to work on it, it may well squish that. So I'm just going to pop it into the next one. And either using your ball tool or your frill stick, I'm just going to thin these petals. And again, you could use your, where's it gone now? The gem. Oh, I actually put it away. We can just add some veining onto that if you want. Spin it around. Okay, a little bit of movement. And then this is going to get pushed in through here and out through the bottom. And we're going to pull that down into that stem at the bottom until it anchors in, and then we're going to pinch that onto the wire and we're going to twiddle. One last twiddle. And pinch and pull off any excess, and then we've got a little flower bud. So they're really good for like small filler flowers. One of the ways that I teach the sugar blossoms, so I taught them two ways. One of the ways, this way here, is using this mat method. The other one, this way, I teach both ways in the same free tutorial. Each petal is individually wired, so you're learning loads of techniques in that free tutorial. And you can just hang that upside in your drying rack. So just randomly tease the petals, some more open, some more closed, and just pop that on your drying rack upside down, or you can hang it into a dummy and just do that. And leave that to dry overnight, and then you can add a little bit of dust onto it if you wanted, nice pale pinks or yellows, whatever you wanted. And that's what this mat is for.
Super. Well, everyone said they've had a really good live. They've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Aww.
And there's quite a few people on here now. We're going to be seeing some sugar flowers and leaves appearing on the community page, because they're all dying to try and get going now.
Well, I hope so, because I love leaves. So.
Somebody said again, how much you love leaves?
Like 10. They are seriously so versatile. If you're not quite clear, it's like what I'm talking about, just go and have a look at my Marie Antoinette Cakes UK Instagram and scroll through the pictures of all my cakes on there. All the flowers on there, apart from on the buttercream cakes, are all made out of sugar. All the leaves, everything. So do go have a look at that for inspiration if you need some ideas about, ways that they're arranged, or different sort of colour tones, different leaf types and shapes and stuff like that, different inspiration that you can get from that as to what you can do with literally the same technique, exactly the same technique that I've shown you tonight. I will just show you this cake in close up, and then Carol's. I need to clear some space for Carol's. Like usual, this
You
is
took over the whole kitchen.
yeah.
You know that, don't
This
you?
is typical for me. I'm a neater ganasher than I am a flower maker. It's like everything just gets covered.
My counter was clear before, and I'm just looking down the kitchen now. There's not a bit of white to be seen.
So this is the cake we're going to decorate on the wedding cake masterclass. I will explain. I did actually damage it on the way here.
No, you didn't.
I
You don't
dropped
have to mention that.
I dropped it, and so it did have a lovely set of hydrangea leaves on here. I have remade some, and I'm just about to glaze them and get them on there. But
This
they
is
will.
what they're going to make in the masterclass.
Yes. So we're going to do some moulding, we're going to do these beautiful ruffles and gilding, we're going to do hand-painted calligraphy and colour washing, we're going to do edible sequins, and we're going to do this beautiful flower arrangement at the top, which is just out of shot, but
I'll
you get
try
the
and
idea.
show things then. Oh no, it's just picking up on you, so.
Extreme close. Simon! So yeah, this is what we're going to do. This beautiful hand-painted calligraphy, which I'm going to share with you how to do that and talk you through all of that. The ruffles are so versatile. So I've created these kind of ruffles in all different types of colour tones. This is a really, it's not picking up on camera at the moment, but this is delicately like pinky nudie colours. But what we may well do on the day is do a different colour combination to this, just to show you in a different version. But yeah, essentially this is what we'll do. We'll spend the whole day doing it. If we can squeeze some more stuff into it, we absolutely will. So yeah, I've already got a few extra little things that we could squeeze into the class, but it obviously all depends on time, which is always a bit of an unknown. So, but yeah, this is what we're going to be doing. I've tried to incorporate, if you've done the sugar paste class, so we've got an extra tall tier here, we've got the square tier here, so I've tried to incorporate some of the skills that perhaps we've already covered in the previous classes, but it will be working on a dummy cake that is already sugar pasted and ready to go, because we've already covered those skills in the class that's on 50% at the moment.
And this is an online class. It's not an in-person class. It's one of our online classes.
Yes.
And what day has it been moved to now? Because it was going to be yesterday, wasn't it?
No, the ganache one was supposed to be today.
Right. all
We've
right.
moved that to October,
Yeah. And what day is this going to be?
November.
November. Oh, well,
Yeah.
good. Well, they've got plenty of time to save up,
Yeah.
haven't they? Get it on.
So obviously, like at the moment, like we were discussing dates and a huge backlog of wedding cakes and stuff that's going to be happening until then. So I'm going to be like getting loads of new designs on Instagram, like to share as I get through all these weddings that have been booked since sort of like 2018, 19. So yeah, keep an eye on that if you want to see what I'm up to on the wedding cake side of things. Otherwise, you can come and obviously join me in the Facebook group. Or the Sugar Craft School Instagram as well for more stuff on the teaching side. But yeah, and obviously if you want to come and join me for tomorrow's live about environmental health audits, if you're due one or if you're about to register or if you've recently registered and you're worried about it, then you're completely welcome to do that as well. Just come and join my group. Make sure you do that before sort of 4:30 tomorrow. You can ask questions and stuff in the live.
Super.
Super.
Right. Okay then.
Well, the love hearts and the thumbs up are all coming away. They're shooting up the page for you. They've said they've had a tremendous live tonight. You've taught them such a lot. They're so grateful.
Oh,
And they're saying that the online classes are amazing. All the online classes that we do are amazing.
yeah.
And a lot of people have bought both of yours and are looking so forward now to looking at this one, buying this when it comes online.
Me too, I can't wait. So yeah, just got to get it photographed and all the details. I've got to put together all the content and stuff. But yeah, it should be within the next week. But the ganache one's already on there, so that's on there for October, but I can't remember the
Do you
exact
want to run
dates.
through what they're going to learn in the ganache one again?
Yeah, so the ganache one is basically, obviously we've done some lives on here, like how to ganache and stuff like that, and I've done the same in my group. But this is a real, like, if you have never ganached or if you're having problems with ganache, we're going to be teaching how to ganache cakes several different ways. So we're going to do the Bridges cake kit and we're going to use the square one because I've never demoed that. We're going to use the Pro Froster and we're going to use ganaching plates. We're going to do colouring of ganache. We're going to do decorative techniques using ganache. So if you don't want to just have ganache as your undercoat sugar paste, but actually want ganache to be your final decorative layer, we're going to do some stuff with that, like a ganache on ganache technique. We're going to do doweling and stacking as usual. But yeah, it's basically going to be everything ganache. And we're also doing milk, dark and white chocolate. So we'll cover all bases for you, so that, you know, any questions at all, because the stuff that we've done before has been like a bit of a, we've touched on things, but really within that, what we know happens is that then you can go and try these things at home, and actually things can not always go to plan, and you can encounter problems and you're not quite sure why they're occurring. So we're going to run through everything for you, so that, you know, no matter what method you're using, no matter what chocolate you're using, you know what to expect, you know what to do if it goes wrong, and you've got that confidence to kind of just crack on and use it. Because I know a lot of people just use it for like an undercoat, which is what I do mostly for my wedding cakes, but actually for wedding cakes and for non-wedding cakes, for celebration cakes, it's a really nice stable top coat, you know, a decorative layer that's a lot less scary than buttercream, because it's firmer at room temperature, so it's not as temperature sort of dependent. So it can be a really good skill for celebration cakes as well as wedding cakes, to have in your back pocket. That's it.
Brilliant. Well done. Round of applause, everyone. She deserves that, doesn't she? Worked very hard, yeah.
Well done.
Really, very pretty. You always work very hard, yeah, absolutely. We make everyone work very hard when they get here. We want our money. Get in. Loads to do. Right, just to say a massive big thank you for all of you joining us tonight. Don't forget, the £2 a bag sugar sale finishes at midnight tonight, so make sure you got all your shopping done. Classes finish at half price on Wednesday, so midnight on Wednesday they finish. Frozen blue is in stock, grab it while you can. And the mini nifty nozzles I've put on pre-order. Please do not order anything else with the mini nifty nozzles. I've ordered plenty of sets, so I'm hoping to have them in 4 weeks. But I have put a lead time of 6 to 8 weeks just because of customs and everything else. So I don't know which way you can see them there. Let me just have a little look. Or you can see them very closely. So this is what I've been making all the noise in the background with, just playing with them.
The one that sounded like she was eating crisps. She wasn't.
Yeah, no, I wasn't eating crisps. Making piping bags. So to be fair, these were the only colours that I had in the fridge, and I just rushed them before, whizzed these colours out the fridge. So the mini nifty nozzles, so here we go. This is, oh sorry, I got Simon on the camera. So this is like the little pink one that you're all after.
They look
okay,
so good.
You get 13 in a set. Let me just
they're gorgeous, aren't they?
I actually really like those colours together.
Yeah.
So there's one there. I put it on the back of there as well.
Oh, the love hearts are going to play for these cakes, Carol.
Then you've got this one. So you've got this one. This is the little night jasmine. I haven't given them all names, if I'm honest, but we've had these for such a long time. But they've normally been sold in sets of 9, and we're going to do these as a set of 13. Okay. Now the reason we're doing them as a 13 is just because I just try to get as many as I can actually in the set. Don't they look pretty? And different colours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a live on Thursday, 2 o'clock, and we're going to use all pastel colours because they look even nicer with pastel colours. So just so you can see those, I don't know where you can see them.
You can see them really well on the iPad. Yeah, they look stunning, absolutely
stunning. So that's what I've been playing with tonight. I even put one inside this flower, so I used it as a centre. So inside that flower there, I've used whipping it up, which is why it's so shiny. So I've actually used the nozzles with whipping it up as well. So which they do work with whipping up. I'll show you a buttercream on Tuesday and on Thursday, and I'll show you with whipping it up as well. But get them ordered if you want them, all right? You've all been waiting for a year for these, and get them ordered. They're pre-ordered. Order nothing else with them. If you are out of the UK, put the country as UK, select, click and collect, okay? And what will happen is once they come into stock, we will then contact you for your address wherever you are in the world and get them shipped out to you that way.
Couple of questions.
So,
if they have the set of 9, is there any point in ordering the set of 13?
No. So if you've got the original set of 9, no, you don't need them. You know, I am a salesperson at the end of the day. The only way I would say to buy them is you will want duplicates, because because you can't put these on couplers, okay? In fact, they might fit on the 1M coupler. In fact, they do fit on the 1M coupler, but it's so big, the 1M coupler. Let me just see if I've got one here. Just one second.
And while you're looking for that, do we do a 2M nozzle?
No.
No, I think you might be looking for the 2D. We have a 1M, and then you said, so Pauline, it'll either be a 2D or a 1M that you're looking for.
So when you want to use a nozzle for the 1M or 2D, you can use these, but to be fair, they fill that so much with buttercream. It's not so bad when it's the 1M, because you use this in a giant piping bag, but you don't want these in your little piping bags, and you definitely need the little piping bags for the little nozzles, because more than a handful is too much, and to be fair, half your handful now is in there. So yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't recommend them. So if you do want to buy yourself another set, I wouldn't say you would go wrong. I used to have about 5 sets of each, and I've had that many customers beg me for the mini nozzles. I've had to say, well, I'll sell you a set of mine if you want, and I've sold them mine, but they've just been that desperate to get them, and I've managed to keep one set to myself. But when they come back in again, I will be having a few sets. So when I'm doing demos all the time, then you'll just end up saying, oh, I want some more.
Is the link on? Is it linked?
It's on the website. It's actually in the community group. It's live. It went live this afternoon. So get your tongue out. So it went live. It's in the community group, and it's actually on the Nifty Nozzles page. And I think I put it in what's new as well. But do remember, it does say read product information. So I'm very straight me. You know, I don't muck about. We can't do any click and collects afterwards. This is going to be a nightmare. There's going to be that many that we've got coming in. I can't have the girls going, oh, I need to add to this order, I need to add to that. This is the order. You order them, done, dusted, yours are reserved. You'll be guaranteed to get a set.
How
all
much,
right?
please?
Pardon?
How much?
The $37.99. Shocking price, if I'm really honest, but it's because of the shipping. The shipping is actually double the cost of the actual nozzles themselves. So it's the shipping bringing them in, and also custom fees as well. And the Mr. Fat Man wants his money. Everybody wants a bit, don't they? So there we go. So $37.99 for 13 mini nozzles.
So please remember, do not put anything else in your basket with your nozzles. You're just ordering nozzles only. Yeah, and don't collect, and also choose your shipping option as well. So if you want next day, you can choose that, but just be mindful, it's not next day tomorrow. Okay, it means that when they come in, yours will get dispatched first. So if you want to do a next day shipping, that's absolutely fine. We don't mind that, but it just means when they come in, and believe me, as soon as they arrive in the building, we will be singing hallelujah and everything else around the building that they've actually arrived. It was like what happened with Frozen Blue today. You know, the songbirds really sung through the company because they were frigging miserable on Friday that they arrived. Everybody knew this morning, Frozen Blues in, thank goodness for that. Well, that's what's going to happen with the nozzles when they're in. So everybody who picks next day shipping, they will get them next day. So as soon as I post that they're in the building, they will be going out on the next day if you choose that option. If you choose standard delivery, well, then they'll take 2 or 3 days to get to you. Yeah? Right, so I'll take them out of the way. So I just want to say another big thank you to Rachel. I'm going to pop her back in front of you again. Big thank you to Simon. Big thank you to Karen. And thank you for putting up with all my noise in the background. But I've got to work in the warehouse tomorrow. And also Karen and I have got a massive big job to do tomorrow. Yes. So I'm trying to just cram everything in. All right then. Cheerio.
I didn't even notice the noise. I was off in my own little world. So if you have any follow-up questions, if you're watching on replay, just tag me in it. But yeah, hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into if you are thinking of making a start on sugar flowers, what to spend your money on, where to spend your money, what bits of kit you will use time and time again. Everything in here I would use time and time again on every, and basically would be my flower making kit regardless of what I'm making. So please don't feel like worried about spending your money on the bits that we've covered today. Obviously veiners and cutters you could spend an absolute fortune on. Some of them are super expensive, but always look to what you've got first and just build up your collection slowly, because you could remortgage your house buying them. And you don't need, you can use multiple things for multiple things. So that would be my big takeaway. But yeah, please do give them a go. If you do, I'd love to see what you've created, as always. And yeah, obviously, if you want to share anything in the group, then please do.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Cheerio.
See you soon.
Bye.
For us. Bye.